Welcome to tonight's Board of Zoning Appeals for September 15th, 2020. I'd like to first start with a roll call, starting from my left.
Kim Keller.
Todd Chernick.
Jason Cole.
Brenda Hampstead.
If you can note for the record, Haj Patel and Don Kurt, Jake Ward are all absent. We do have a quorum, however, so we can proceed with this tonight's meeting. If you please stand and join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman, just given if we don't expect anyone else, might we ask Ms.
I'm fine with that.
To step up here?
If Ms. Hampstead would like to join us at the big boy table. And a big girl table. While we're doing this, if anyone is here to speak for public comment, there is a yellow public comment card. We'd ask you to fill that out and hand it to staff prior to speaking during tonight's meeting for any public comment. I'd also just make a general announcement regarding this meeting in the sense that we are webcasting these meetings as we always do. And in light of the pandemic, we also have participation via Zoom. So if you are attending via Zoom, there are a few guidelines I'd like to mention. Everyone is muted and your videos are turned off by default to minimize any disruptions. If you'd like to make a comment during the public hearing portions of this meeting, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Hand. We'll repeat these general instructions at each public comment portion of tonight's meeting. If you are calling into the meeting on a phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 on your keypad. Once the moderator calls your name, please unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone button on the bottom of your screen or by pressing *6 on your phone. Again, I'll review these instructions as we enter public comment throughout tonight's meeting. I'd make a motion to approve tonight's agenda as published.
I'll second.
A motion to approve with a second by Jason Cole. Any discussion? All those in favor of approval say aye. Aye. Opposed say nay. Motion to adopt tonight's agenda as published is passed. Unanimous. Item number 5 on our agenda is approval of our July meeting minutes. For the record, we did not have a meeting in August for the Board of Zoning Appeals, so our last meeting was in July. I would make a motion to approve our July meeting minutes as published.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Ms. Hampstead. Any discussion? We have one board member who was not here for July, so we'll abstain, but we can still carry a vote. All those in favor of approving the July meeting minutes as published say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain.
Motion passed 3-0. We're moving then into item number 6, which is consideration of primary variances. I just want to make a general announcement before we move into the cases. If there is anyone here regarding the Rough House case, that case has been deferred and will not be heard tonight. It will be heard as early as our next scheduled meeting, which at this point is in October. So just trying to be sensitive to everyone's time. If anyone's here for Rough House case It will not be heard tonight. It will not be discussed tonight. However, we will start with our primary variances, starting with V20-14. But before we jump into that, I wanted to make clear for the record that the Board of Zoning Appeals is a quasi-judicial board comprised of resident volunteers of the City of Milton. The board is charged with hearing requests for variances from the standards of the zoning ordinance and appeals of administrative determination. With regard to decisions on primary variances, the board's basis for decision is provided by these four considerations. A, relief if granted would not offend the spirit or intent of the ordinance. And B, there are such extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property that the literal or strict application of the ordinance would create an unnecessary hardship due to the size, shape, or topography or other extraordinary and exceptional situations or conditions not caused by the variance applicant. And C, relief if granted would not cause a substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. And D, that the public safety, health, and welfare are secured and that substantial justice is done. With that, I'd ask staff to please present item V20-14, 705 Nettlebrook Lane.
Case number V20-14, 705 Nettlebrook Lane. This case has been administratively deferred. The applicant is still working with the architect to resolve the design review board meeting comments. So once I get an answer from him, he will be on the next scheduled meeting.
Okay. And since it's been administratively deferred, we do not need to take a vote to defer this one from our board. That leads us to the next item on our agenda, which is V20-15, 810 Guardian Court. Would staff please present?
Case number V20-15, 810 Guardian Court. The requested variances is to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the rear yard setback, section 64-416I, and to allow an existing fireplace to be located in the side yard, section 64-77-2B2. The site is a 1.08 acre lot located along the west side of Guardian Court in the Manor subdivision. It is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton overlay. The first part of the variance is to allow an accessory structure to be 37 feet from the rear property line, Exhibit A. The applicant has indicated the size of the accessory structure is 23 feet by 25 feet, Exhibit E. The pool on the subject site is existing and was constructed before the incorporation of the city. The second part of the variance is to allow the existing fireplace to be located in the side yard. The applicant plans to construct an accessory structure that will incorporate the existing fireplace, Exhibit D and E, that will encroach into the rear yard setback. Section 64-416I states that accessory structures may be located in rear or side yards, but shall not be located within a minimum yard. The applicant proposes to construct an accessory structure that will be 37 feet from the rear yard instead of the required 50 feet. Section 64-77-2B2 states outdoor fireplaces, whether stand alone or constructed as part of a patio, retaining wall, or other structure, may be located in the rear yard and may extend no more than 10 feet into the minimum rear yard. The applicant proposes to construct an accessory structure that will encroach into the rear yard setback and to legalize an existing fireplace that is located in the side yard. A two-part variance is required. The Design Review Board courtesy review on August 4th, 2020, the DRB met and had the following comments per subject to the neighbor's letter stating approval. The applicant response, please see the letter of appeal in your packet. The staff response, part one, the applicant is proposing the location of the accessory structure to be 37 feet from the rear property line, Exhibit A. The placement of the accessory structure will be in correlation with the location of the existing fireplace that is located in the side yard. The proposed structure is the structure is proposed to be 23 feet by 25 feet and will be used as an open air pool cabana. Part two, the applicant wants to incorporate the fireplace into the proposed accessory structure. The proposal will have the least amount of impact on the property as the fireplace is already constructed. allowing the encroachment of the proposed accessory structure in the rear yard setback and the existing fireplace to be located in the side yard will not cause detriment to the public good. Public safety, health, and welfare will be secured, and substantial justice will be done for the surrounding properties. Staff recommends approval of the two-part variance request.
Okay, before we ask the applicant to come forward, are there any questions for staff? None? Okay. Would the applicant please come forward and share with us more about what your plans are? And if you would, please announce your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Wayne Massey. I reside at 810 Guardian Court, Alpharetta.
So we are in receipt of your plans as well as the drone video that you submitted, as well as letters of support from, it appears to be neighbors, but I would like you to please clarify. We've got letters of support from Mr. and Mrs. Carson.
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes, they directly behind the house
Okay.
that own the farm.
Thank you for clarifying that. Kristen and Clint Darnell?
Yes.
Neighbors?
Yes. Their property barely touches a piece of our property, as this map will show each name.
They're behind into the corner?
Yes.
And,
Todd, he has a map with their names on it.
oh, you do?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just actually for the public's
Sure.
benefit to understand as well. I may have you actually show that on the, do we have the projector screen available? No, we don't. Never mind then. I'm going to do this the old-fashioned way. Also, Brad and Jennifer Bailey as support
That's correct. They live across from our cul-de-sac.
across the street. And I'm not going to, Sridhar Galu?
Yes, they live in the cul-de-sac as well, not next door, but in the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Well, thank you for working to secure neighbors' support in all these instances. Well, I got more. Jeez.
There's,
Cindy Jacobs is in support as well,
yes, they're our next door neighbor.
next door. Kim and Kevin Perpetua.
Yes, their property, again, it comes to a very corner that they're not actually next door, but our properties do touch a corner.
Okay, so corner neighbor.
A very,
Yeah, you have a unusually shaped lot.
Yes.
In a cul-de-sac, I understand. And looks like Stephen and Lisa Evans
yes, that's our neighbors
in support.
next door, yes.
Okay, I think that's, if there's any others, I think I got them all. So could you just, high level, go ahead and present what your intentions are?
So we're just, like I say, we've been there for about 14 years now, and we've got a nice fireplace we built with the pool and with the house as it was being constructed. And as we getting older and kids have grown and out of college, and we find ourselves under the umbrellas more than anything. So we just, I think it fits well to do an open air cabana and tie it into the fireplace, and just something that would be very positive for the outlay of the pool.
I did notice from your pictures and video, there's a hot tub, and it looks to be like some other sort of pool area in
It's
that
kind of a wet
vicinity?
bar. Yes, it's got bar stools underwater in it that you can sit and watch TV.
Will that remain?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Will that be under the cover?
It's going to be like the cabana, the overhang of the cabana will cover some of the bar stools in that.
Oh, that helps explain. I was just looking more for land disturbance, and it doesn't appear that there will be much
No.
in regards there.
No.
Anything
I've got it.
further?
I've got to take down like a blue Atlas cedar that we had planted, that and one other shrub to fit the cabana in. That's the only really disturbance that I have to do.
Okay. Does staff have any comment regarding the removal of this blue Atlas cedar? Will that come up during the permitting process, if there is any restrictions or replacement required?
Yes, that'll be reviewed when he submits for a building permit. They'll calculate if there's any recompense that needs to be done.
Okay. I noticed you had 3 exhibits. One was a sketch, one was a picture, and one was your actual drawing. And what I could determine from the sketch from Exhibit C, it looks like there's a back wall with the fireplace.
Yes.
But in the picture in Exhibit D didn't show a back wall, so I'm just wanting to clarify if you're building a one-sided wall.
Oh, E. Oh, okay. Yeah, that was just a doodle more just to show how we're trying to get the wood structure, the beams to be. But there is plan. The back wall would be the fireplace.
Okay. Will that wall be enclosed entirely, or will it just be the fireplace?
Fireplace.
Okay. So it is more like the picture in Exhibit D.
That is correct.
Okay. All right. And one other point that I wanted to raise, just for your awareness, regarding drainage. You mentioned that you've done extensive drainage, which obviously you would have had to have given the terracing that you have in the backyard. An engineered certificate on your drainage plan will be something that will come up during site plan review.
Okay.
So I just wanted to alert you to that and make you aware of the fact that a drainage plan and certification of what you have in place, if you're tying into that flow well system,
yes,
you'll need to have an engineered certificate when you get the site plan, assuming this is approved.
Okay. So don't quite understand.
It's because you're potentially creating more diverted flow with this roof structure. And you mentioned in your application that you were going to tie into your drainage system.
Right.
They'll want to see what drainage system are you tying into.
I understand. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay.
Yep.
If this is approved.
Yep.
Are there any questions for staff? Or I'm sorry, for the applicant?
I just had one question. I didn't follow along probably clearly enough with everybody who gave their support, your neighbors. Did you get the neighbors directly behind you off of Westbrook Road?
Yes.
Okay,
That's the
they were one
Carsons.
of these.
Yes.
these
Yes, ma'am.
centers.
That's the
Okay.
Carsons.
Okay, thank you.
That would be the closest point of encroachment would be at the rear. So
That's correct.
any other questions for the applicant? All right, so the way this process works is you'll have a chance to take a seat. We're going to open it up for public comment. We may have some additional questions based on the public comment. You'll have a chance, if you prefer, to make a closing remark, or you can defer.
Okay.
So with that, I'll make note that we're moving into public comment. If you could go ahead and take a seat. If anyone is here to speak in public comment or on Zoom or phone, this is your chance to speak. We'll first start with a 10-minute session, equal 10-minute sessions for anyone here to speak in favor. We'll then move to a 10-minute session in total for anyone to speak in opposition. So starting with, is there anyone here present that wishes to speak in favor of this application? Anyone on the phone or Zoom?
No.
Okay. Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to this application?
No.
On phone or Zoom?
No.
Okay, so we have no public comment. As I said, Mr. Massey, you do have an opportunity to make a closing comment, and we do also have an opportunity to ask closing questions if we do have any. If you would please come forward. Are there any questions for staff or for the applicant before we move into a motion? Would you care to make any closing comments, sir? You're good with deferring that, okay? All right, I'll make a note for the record that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion to approve V20-15, 810 Guardian Court, to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the rear yard setback and to allow an existing fireplace to be located in the side yard. And I think that I'd like to add to that this accessory structure needs to be 23 by 25 as indicated in this petition. Is
Site plan.
Okay.
The site plan.
In the site plan.
I wanted to make a motion, but I also would like to friendly amend
Okay.
the second part of your condition, which is the structure shall be 23 by 25, as noted on the McWhirter-Gilbert, per the site plan of McWhirter-Gilbert-Anderson, received July 1st, 2020. Are you okay with that addition?
Yes.
Clarification on your
Yes,
size
I am.
and structure? So the site plan would indicate size as well as location for the structure. Is there any discussion regarding this motion, which was seconded for approval? All those in favor of approving V20-15 say aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passed unanimous.
Just to be clear, Cody, did you get the second on that?
Hit the second.
I seconded.
Okay.
And amended.
And clarified. Thank you for your preparation in this application and for following the process. Good luck with your project. You can contact staff later this week to identify the next steps with building permits, et cetera. Next item on our agenda is V20-1614355 Freemanville Road. Would staff please present?
Case number V20-16-14355 Freemanville Road. The requested variance is to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the rear yard setback. The background, the proposed site is a 2.595 acre lot that is associated with the parent parcel located at 1470 Red Road. The parent parcel is 5.764 acres. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the Rural Milton Overlay and is located at the intersection of Red Road and Freemanville Road. The parent parcel is currently under review for a minor plat subdivision, and the applicant is proposing to keep the existing accessory structure on Lot 3 on the minor plat, Exhibit A, that is 12.4 feet from the rear property line. Section 64-416I states that accessory structures may be located in rear or side yards, but shall not be located within a minimum yard. Since the applicant proposes to keep the existing accessory structure on the site during the minor plat process, a variance is required. On September 1st, 2020, the DRB met and had the following comments: on board and support the variance and adds value to the property and area. The applicant response, please see the letter of appeal in your packet. The staff response, the applicant is proposing to keep the existing accessory structure that will be located in the rear yard setback. Before the subdivision of the parent parcel, the accessory structure was located in the side yard setback. Now that new property lines and lots are being proposed, the setbacks have shifted, making the accessory structure be located in the rear yard setbacks. This accessory structure keeps the character of rural Milton by preserving older structures and incorporating them into the property. Allowing the encroachment of the existing accessory structure in the rear yard setback will not cause detriment to the public good. Public safety, health, and welfare will be secured, and substantial justice will be done for the surrounding properties. Staff recommends approval of this request.
Are there any questions for staff? I have one question, and this is to confirm the ordinance restriction on barns in terms of housing livestock or horses.
Correct. So if the barn will be used, or sorry, the accessory structure will be used as a true barn that will store horses, livestock, or any kind of animals, that has to be 100 feet from all property lines. If the barn will be used for storage, and I believe this is what the applicant is intending on doing, then it can be within the building setbacks or requested by a variance that is being currently proposed.
So, asked another way, if this board were to approve this accessory structure, this structure and its use would still be limited by the livestock ordinance of 100 feet to property lines.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for I do have one other question. The structure looked very old. And does the city make any determination on the structural integrity of a structure like this in terms of, is it safe?
I'm sure the building official can make a site visit to determine, and we can probably get some reports from the applicant on engineering to see if the structure's sound. I really...
Will it also give them the right to be able to tear it down and rebuild it? Right?
Well,
that's
the question.
So once the variance if the variance is approved by the board here tonight, whoever buys it would be able to tear it down in the future and rebuild a new accessory structure in that location with those setbacks.
Okay, and any structure that they would put in its place could not exceed that footprint. Correct?
If that's what you...
If we subject it to the site plan.
If you make it subject to the site
plan. And it would be subject to architectural review? Any new structure?
It would be in the future.
Okay, so...
Or the stipulations, we could put the stipulations that would have to go through the architectural review.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, the condition would be great, but there is, the current code would require it anyway, but having the condition would keep it in perpetuity.
So, Mr. Cole, I'd like to clarify your intent there.
Well, I'm saying if he was to be able to, if we grant the variance, then he could essentially tear the building that he's got down, rebuild, if we so put the condition on it, put the condition to be able to rebuild it back on the same footprint. But then the architectural, he couldn't just put a metal building or something like that. He'd have to get approval based on the city architect or from the city architect.
So your intent then is if he were to, or the future, if this structure were to be demolished and rebuilt, it would be subject to architectural review. That's your intent.
Correct.
Not the current structure.
No, the current structure is already there, but if his intent is to tear the current structure down and rebuild something, whatever is rebuilt would have to be put in front of the architectural review.
That would be correct. And if you put that as a condition, then that would stay with the property in perpetuity.
And then related to this line of questioning, if it is found to be in some degree of disrepair, or if there is repairs that are planned, is there a threshold in which it would be subject to architectural review in terms of the modification? Is there a modification threshold?
Any modification to the structure would require architectural review. If it's modified more than 50% of its value, then it would have to be brought up to current building code standards. Otherwise, if they just did something less than 50% of its current value, then it would stay under the original code that it was built under.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, I asked the applicant, looks like Mr. Gray, to please come forward and present. If you could please just kind of give us a better understanding of what your intent and project is. Any background?
Sure.
Yes, please state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
Chris Gray, and my address is 4008 Johnson Ferry Drive in Marietta.
Okay. Can you kind of give us a little bit of background to what you're looking at doing?
Sure. We bought the property, the 5.7 plus acres, and with the intent to sell the existing house and build 2 more houses after subdivision. We're going through the process of subdivision, and the variance was required, and trying to keep the barn. We feel like it adds value to the third property, the Freemanville Road property. So that's our intent.
So you've heard some of our discussion tonight regarding livestock as one item, and then also questioning the actual condition or integrity of the barn.
Right.
Can you speak to both of those points?
Well, our intent is to sell the property, and the owners would be the users thereof. So if there's any kind of restraint on livestock, then obviously we would let them know of that and give them the documentation that follows that. As far as the integrity, it is an old barn, and I'm sure there's some things that will have to be repaired, but it's not falling down. It's in decent shape. You can walk around it, and it had obviously been used as storage in prior use. So don't know what the intent will be for whatever the new owners would use it for.
In terms of, so you're the current owner /
Yes.
working towards subdividing this 5.7 acres into 3 lots.
That's correct.
And they would sell off this parcel. You're not actually going to build a home, or
Yes.
you would
No,
build a home and
we'll
sell
build,
that.
build the home and sell
Okay.
the property.
So you're in the subdivision plat process currently.
Correct.
Do you have any concerns? Should we move to approve this with a condition that you would note on the plat, that no horse, livestock, this parcel is subject to horse and livestock restrictions for the accessory structure?
Right. I wasn't aware of that, but if that's the ruling of the board, then yeah, we would obviously.
Well, that's the current ordinance. I just want to make it abundantly clear to
Sure.
the future buyer.
Understood. Yeah.
It would be my intent if I were to condition.
Okay.
Also, since you would be looking at selling this parcel, recording the same in the deed upon sale, this
Okay.
restriction?
Yes.
Okay. Do you intend on making any improvements to the barn at the time of your building the home?
Not unless we sold it prior to completion and the new owners asked for it. But no, the intent is to sell it as is.
As is.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant?
I was just wondering if you could speak on your letter of appeal where it says to remove the barn will result in undue hardship to the parent property and will yield a substantially reduced return unless the barn remains on the property.
The barn adds value to the property. It adds appeal to the buyers. We've had several people look at it and excited that there's a barn on the property. So if it was subject to being torn down, then it would not be as appealing.
And that's going to be on lot 3 though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But if you don't know, it's a very flat lot, so all
Right.
three properties would have see the barn. I mean, it's in the backyard of the other 2 properties.
I think that was our point to the condition of the architectural point, is that if we granted it and we didn't put any steps on it, then whoever bought it could tear it down and put something not as appealing that all 3 properties would have to look at.
Correct.
So my question is, you're okay that we're going to put steps on it, assuming that it's
I mean, I would
approved.
assume that if anything was done, it would have to go through the appeals process, or the approval process. So
Right.
To me, that's not adding anything to the deal. And if somebody chose to tear it down, again, I would think that would have to obviously go through approval. So I don't think that's onerous in any way.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant? Do you have any questions for us? Okay. Any questions for staff? We're going to move into public comment like we did with the prior case.
Okay.
You'll have
Sure.
an opportunity to make a closing comment if you care.
Thank you.
In moving into public comment, same as you heard prior, we'll have 2 equal 10-minute sessions. First to speak 10 minutes in total for those in favor, followed by a 10-minute session for anyone interested in speaking in opposition. I'm just going to make, as I said I would earlier, just a quick comment. If there's anyone on Zoom, do we have folks logged in on Zoom?
We do have people logged on.
If there is anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak during public comment, at this point, please raise your hand by clicking on the icon labeled participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled raise hand. If you're dialed into this meeting by phone, you can press *9 on your keypad to raise your hand, and then *6 to unmute your phone. So with that, do we have anyone here or via Zoom or phone wishing to speak in favor of V20-16?
We don't have anybody on Zoom.
Okay. Do we have anyone here that wishes to speak in opposition to V20-16 or online?
We don't have anybody.
Okay, so for the record, there's no interest for public comment in favor or in opposition to this particular case. Mr. Gray, you have an opportunity to make a closing comment before we move into session of motion. So Mr. Gray declined that opportunity. Before I close the public comment, are there any final questions for staff?
Are there people living on the property closest to where the barn is? Do you want?
That's a question more for staff.
Yes, it's for staff.
Yes.
There's neighboring properties that are residences. It's not just land, I think is really your question. So the neighbors closest to that barn to the east.
Just want to make sure you're clear for track 2 or for the property to the north.
The property to the north is that the cemetery?
Is this track 3? Are we talking about the 2-story frame barn?
Yeah, this is track 2. This is the barn. This is north.
Yep.
Yeah. So north is
So north is the cemetery. East is a single-family residential.
I think that was Ms. Keller's question. The neighbors to the east, is it actually a residence?
Yes.
And for an abundance of clarification, for these public meetings, can staff please reiterate what notifications go out to and what radius of notifications go out for these meetings?
Yes. So for public notification, a letter has been sent out to 300 feet around the property. So everybody that's on this survey received some form of notification, either by mail, newspaper, and et cetera.
And has staff received any correspondence in favor or against from any of those notified?
No, we did not receive any calls or emails about the variance.
Has the applicant spoken with neighbors in this instance? And can you please come forward to the microphone? This is pretty important. Without hearing directly from the neighbor, we're just trying to understand. In this case, I think Ms. Keller is trying to understand what the sentiment or contact is with the neighbor has been made.
We did not speak specifically about, do you mind if the barn stays? That would seem unnecessary, but But we have talked to them, and they know obviously that we're building buildings. They're actually work with my son in his occupation, so they know what we're doing and the intent of the development. So, but specifically, do you have any problems leaving a barn where it's been for 60-something years? No, we did not ask that.
Okay.
Because it's encroaching in the, right?
It's close. It's
only
12
12
feet
from the
away.
property. Okay, just making sure I understand correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So whoever lives
Public comment?
on that other side, there's no name referenced here. Closest property line to there. Is there someone who lives there?
Yes, there's people on the two sides.
Okay.
So, but they're
I'm going to assume their house is not close to that property
No.
line.
Right. It looks
Neither-
pretty far set back from the road.
yeah, no, neither house is close at all, and there's trees and
Okay.
horse barns and everything else in between.
Okay. Hang tight for a second.
Okay.
There may be more questions. Yes.
It's come to our attention
Mr.
that somebody,
Buscemi.
if we could reopen public comment, somebody from the audience didn't realize that they had missed the public comment.
Gotcha.
So I guess if the board wants to, they could.
Yes, I would prefer to hear from the public in this case if possible. So yes. Do we have more than one interested party?
I believe it's
Cody?
one.
Do we have more than one party interested in speaking?
I believe it's just one.
Just one? Okay, so would you please announce them? They could come forward.
Would you go ahead and just formally have a
I think
motion
you
to
have to formally
reopen?
reopen public comment.
Well, I haven't closed public comment.
Okay, I wondered if I didn't
No,
think that I'd heard
I haven't
it, but
closed
if
public
you haven't,
comment.
Then let's, yeah, go ahead.
Franklin Paul.
Mr. Paul, if you would please state your name and address for the record, that'd be great.
Yes, Franklin Paul, 14395. So I own the property, the 6 acres adjoining. So I think I really didn't know
This is
what.
Red Road. This
So-
is Red Road. This is Freemanville. You're here to the right?
No, if you turn right from Red Road up Freemanville, the driveway just past the cemetery.
Understood. So you're up here.
Correct.
Gotcha.
My property line adjoins the subdivision that's being the 3 houses.
Oh,
Okay.
his name's on here. You're Paul, Mr. Paul?
Yes, ma'am.
His name's on there. Do you see it?
I do.
Okay.
The reason I didn't come forward is I really wasn't sure what this was concerning. I didn't know if it concerned the house that's being constructed right now. The barn sits right in the corner of the property. That's right next to my property line. I would like to take a look first and see so I can speak intelligently about. My only concern, I guess, is if a new structure gets built, the purpose of that structure, I know that livestock is going to be probably out of the question because of the setback.
Right.
However, that's right up next to my property line, and I guess I would like to go out, take a look at it now that I know what exactly we're talking about before I make a determination.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. I understand your intention.
Well, being that you were notified in advance and they're here tonight looking
Yes.
for a decision, if we approve it as is, basically we're approving that the barn can stay there, otherwise it has to be demolished, right? Because it's...
Without a variance, it's a non-conforming structure, correct, staff?
That's correct. They would not be allowed to do the subdivision, the minor plot.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you.
I'm sorry. They would not, it's holding the minor plat up. You can't do the subdivision. You can't subdivide a piece of property and have a non-conforming use on it.
They
So,
would either have to tear it down or we have to give them a variance.
yeah, if they take it down, they'd have to go for a demolition approval through the DRB. And if they get that approval, yes, then they would have to take it down.
So the easiest thing is to leave the barn, get it approved so they can move forward with their subdivision. Is that correct?
Yes, that would legalize the barn, and which would then allow them to do the minor plat subdivision, which allows up to 3 lots, a maximum of 3 lots on the subdivision. It's considered a minor plat.
I want to address the comment, the easiest thing to do. I don't think that's what you meant. I think in order to keep this process moving forward, we would like to make a decision tonight. However, we don't need to.
No, I was more just saying he seemed like he wanted more time. And so I was just trying to figure out what your concern was. You know, like if the barn's been there and we approve it to stay there, what would be your concern, or what would you be looking to figure out, giving you
Prior tonight to come into the meeting, I had no idea. I thought it actually had something to do with the house that's being built now.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was the barn that's in the corner there.
Okay.
So did you say that? What's this current setback on that?
It's from the closest property line, which is to the east, not your property line.
Okay.
Is 12.4 feet. To your property line is 29 feet at its closest point.
Okay.
And as you heard earlier, I assume you were here for the discussion regarding the existing ordinance on livestock restrictions would require any structure housing livestock to be at 100 feet from any property line. So this structure would not be eligible to house any form of livestock in its current position.
Is it
now or in the future?
Be storage? Is that the only use it could have?
I'd ask that question of staff.
They couldn't make it a guest home or something. It would have to just be like a storage.
Can staff please go on record with answering that?
So for what the accessory structure usage would be only to use for storage for like lawnmowers, tools, etc. They cannot have a guest house, can't have any kind of living quarters in there, can't store any livestock or horses. It'll just be a accessory use to the principal building, which would be like a shed. I mean, it's pretty much just a larger shed.
Adding, if this applicant or future owners of this property were to want to add electricity, would the permit be required, first of all, and would this be allowed?
Just electricity, more than likely. We would have to see the intended scope to see exactly what they want to do. But if it's just to run power to a light, that wouldn't be any issue.
Subject to a permit?
Correct. Yeah, it's still subject to a permit.
And would the structure be required to have it be brought up to any code?
No.
Okay. Because it's not 50%.
Unless the improvement exceeds 50% of the structure would not have to be brought up to current code standards.
Okay. I guess to further set your mind at ease, what questions do you have?
I guess my only concern is the intent, what the final use of the building is going to be. If it can be demolished and something the same size built there, it's just a concern of what exactly is going to be built. If it's only storage, then I really don't have an issue.
So if it were demolished and rebuilt, it could be rebuilt. If this were approved based on this site plan, it could be rebuilt at the same footprint, size, but any structure would be subject to architectural review by the city for the building permit process. So,
and would myself and Stephen Domenico that lives, he's the property that's right there 12 and a half foot away. Would there be a chance at that time to look at what the intent is going to be of that structure?
The design and weigh into what
Correct.
The design? I'll ask the city architect.
it would come through architectural review, but we don't advertise and invite the neighbors in. But architecturally, all structures that abut a city road would be subject to architectural review, and the standards are high, and we make sure that they all meet the standards of the rural Milton overlay, which is, keeping the Milton-esque character.
So this area is identified as the rural Milton overlay, and it has a specific set of design standards for that area. It would, can you characterize what structure, what standards it would be subject to in terms of design? I think that you're as much worried about what's there versus what could end up being there, if I'm hearing you.
I mean, I know what's there now, and it just, right now, it's just an old barn.
Correct.
My only concern is the unknown of the future of something going in that's different than that barn.
So the only approved use, even with this variance, if it were approved, would be as an accessory
Just a storage.
structure. Just storage. That's the only approved use, correct?
It is. I mean, accessory could mean automobile storage as well. So, I mean, somebody could put a car.
A garage.
Yeah,
Okay.
they could say, oh, we want to store some cars in there or something. I mean, people have done that. But architecturally, as the city architect, I ensure that all of these buildings, they're not metal frame. They really have that old Milton character look to it. All the barns in Milton, all the structures that are going up, subject to some pretty rigid reviews to ensure that they meet the architectural character that Milton is known for.
And that's not dictated just by the person who sits in that role, but that's dictated by the standards that are documented for our city. So no metal building is an example that Bob highlighted of an unacceptable design.
Okay. If it just stays as a storage, like I said, my only concern is the unknown of the future, and if that's going to be totally demolished and something built, then my only concern was I would want it to stay in the same realm of the barn that's there.
The usage.
Correct.
Understood. Okay. Thank you for coming and speaking. It can be difficult to raise a flag, but as a neighbor, so I hope you appreciated the time that we spent to understand your concern and work through that.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'm just kind of curious. I'd like to hear from the city attorney that does the board have the authority in its motion to say that they'll legalize the building that's there, but if that building was to come down or be modified more than 50% of its value, that then it would have to be placed into an area that conforms with the current zoning setbacks?
You could absolutely limit it to the existing structure, and if it's torn down, it would not apply to any future rebuild.
Right. So that's what I'm thinking. So that, in a sense, that would ensure that the building that's there, that everybody has seen and has been there for a while, would remain. People can improve it up to 50% of its value to maintain it to some degree, but they wouldn't be able to just tear it down and put up another structure unless it conforms to the new setback.
They would have to
setback
get another
requirements.
variance, correct? They would have to get another variance.
If they want to go back in that place.
Well, yeah, they'd have to come back because this would be a condition of this variance. They'd have to come back and ask for you to reconsider your condition.
Let me say there's kind of two things. One is you can prevent any other rebuild going on that location, or you could allow a rebuild, but only if it goes through whatever process you wanted to apply to it. It might have to go through existing procedures anyway, but you could expressly condition architectural review or whatever else you wanted it to go through.
Right.
Are we in our discussion?
Yes, we are.
I guess
Well, we are actually in questions to staff. Public comment is still technically open. So, do you have more questions?
No, I have more comments.
I actually would like some direction on language regarding the variance being limited to this structure. And if you could help me with that?
If a condition would be that the the variances approved for the existing structure. If the existing structure is removed, then the variance would not apply to any rebuild or any future structures.
And so I understand correctly, they would then, if they wanted to rebuild, have to come through and get a new variance.
That would be correct.
Well, but we would want them to not be in that setback, though, so they would not require a variance, right?
Well, they could not go in there without getting a variance.
Another variance.
Right, yeah.
Or
Point in that, but.
And if they did that, then the board would be made aware that the prior board, say, or prior board decision was to limit it. So then I knew, when the board makes any recommendation in the future, they would probably weigh that in. So, well, geez, you were allowed to maintain it with the caveat that, you don't rebuild it. Now you're coming back and asking us to
you would arguably have details of what the new proposal would be, as opposed to some potential future maybe structure.
To be more clear and more concise, would it be acceptable if this were a condition for this board to say that this variance is limited to this existing structure?
Yes.
Period. And then the second condition being any modification or alterations to the existing structure are subject to architectural review?
Yes.
Without going into the demolition and replacement and whatever, it's just this variance is limited to this structure.
Sure.
Can we put in there something about usage as well? I mean, in here in the appeal, it talks about the possibility of being a pool house.
Yeah, I have a note regarding our conversation or discussion on the horse and livestock restrictions on the plat, as well as a deed restriction, in terms of its use as a pool house.
That's what it says on the appeal. Letter of appeal.
You want to ask staff for some direction, or the city attorney for some direction on that usage? Is that an allowable usage? And it's as an accessory structure?
As an accessory structure, a pool house, if it's built within the setbacks, is an allowable use for an accessory structure.
So do we need to discuss that with the neighbor or both neighbors and see, they wouldn't need a variance at that point, and the neighbors wouldn't have been able to
They need the
variance
to be where it is, but as an accessory structure, that use falls under the accessory structure use. But they wouldn't.
So in short, Brenda, they would be allowed to use it as a pool house without a condition. If you don't place a condition restricting it tonight, that is an acceptable use.
So the use could be restricted to storage.
Yes.
Yes.
You wouldn't need to restrict it to storage only if no one would use the existing barn as a pool house, and if we condition it that only that is getting the variance, if they were to tear it down, they wouldn't be able to build a pool house back without getting approval for another variance to put it back in that spot.
But the existing structure can be improved somewhat, correct, without a variance?
Less than 50%.
Yeah, so they could improve it enough to make it a pool house.
In its current form.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm just wondering how
if we're not comfortable with that, allowing that use, we could restrict it.
Mm-hmm. Wondering how the neighbor feels about that, like if that's a possibility.
Well, I think rather than open it up for debate, I think we
can do
need
this
to consider, from our experience on this, if that's a condition restriction that we would care to introduce.
Devalue the property, though, if you make that step.
Well, it's limiting it within the setback.
Mm-hmm.
No, I understand, but I'm saying
I hear your point.
I think it's a stretch to assume that someone's going to convert that old barn with less than 50% into a pool house.
Oh, they may be able to. I think that's a possibility.
I know we're not. Are we in discussion? My concern is how close it is to the one property line, the 12 feet.
Okay, let's move to closing the public comment and then move into a motion, and we can discuss some of those items based on whatever motions we get. So with that, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a. I'm sorry, I did not give you a closing statement. My apologies. We'll back into you having an opportunity to make a closing comment before I close the public comment. I apologize, Mr. Gray.
Thank you very much. A couple of things that came up in that public comment. One, there is electricity to the property now. It has power to it. So
to the structure,
to the barn, to the structure, yes, okay. And to the property, it's in the setback for the back. It's not in the setback to the side. So that is another point that I'd like to make. And then the third is, I think I understand your concern about neighbors and everything, but I believe we would be lessening the value if you restrict it too much. I mean, if it's an accessory building, then it should be able to be used. The use should be able to be used for whatever the laws and ordinances of Milton allow. So we would ask that it not be restricted any further than it is. I understand that neighbors are important. We can go talk to specifically the one neighbor, and be glad to talk to the other gentleman after this. But I don't think that any of the accessory building restrictions should be restricted beyond that. And then the fourth thing is, you could easily spend more than 50% on just beefing up the structure if in fact you ever wanted to do that. And to go for a variance for keeping the barn and the structure as it is seems to be another onerous deal that would, it should be able to be kept in its current form without going through the variance process is what trying to look ahead to an owner that might want to keep the barn and use it for an accessory building, but wants to beef up the structure, spends more than 50% and has to go through this process again, seems to be more than should be necessary for keeping a barn the way it is. And so we'd like to get the variance approved, obviously, but not too restrictively.
Can you clarify my interpretation of the 50% threshold? Bob, if you could please clarify, is if the subject building is improved more than 50% of its value,
right,
then it's subject to being brought up to current building code.
Correct.
And also architectural review.
Correct. And don't have a problem with that at all. But
we're not saying it needs to go back for another variance. If it's the existing structure and its existing footprint, you would not have to come back for an.
So I can spend 200% of the cost, keep it as a barn, and not go through the variance.
As long as it stays at that footprint and,
right,
and it passes architectural review.
Okay, that's all I'm asking.
Can you please confirm that?
That's all correct.
Okay. I heard differently.
Restrict it for usage?
But you got to understand, we got to put some conditions on it to protect your neighbors from you. Your intention may not be to do anything but a barn, but someone moves in and decides I want to put a pool house there, and I've already got the variance because I'll just build it on that footprint. I'll tear it down. At that point, that's not what we, in good faith, approved it for. We approved it for a barn and a storage. But I agree with you that putting too many restrictions on it now devalues your property, so I don't want to do that to you.
Right.
But there's got to be a discussion on if we approve it, it's approved as a storage facility with the ability to get a variance for anything other than that potentially. So if they just, so it's approved as a storage facility as it is now. If someone wants to convert it to a better storage facility, that's okay. But if they want to convert it to a pool house, then they would have to get a variance to convert it to a pool house.
If I could get a clarification, my understanding that a pool house would meet the criteria for an accessory building, which it is, and therefore would be okay. And that's what, and it, frankly, that is one use that I see as a very attractive use that I would not like to be restricted.
Well, you wouldn't be restricted, but it would be, that's not what, it's not a pool house now. No. So it's a storage facility.
But
so we're
from the exterior and the neighbors' concerns, what difference, inside of the building usage would make a difference to any neighbor? I guess is my question.
If it's a storage facility, then nobody's hanging out playing loud music or doing whatever that they would be doing if it was a pool house. And I think that's Mr. Paul's point. So we got to look out for Mr. Paul and Mr. Domenico as well.
And I agree. Understand.
And I'm not saying you couldn't ever make it a pool house, but you'd have to get approval to make it a pool house with another variance. We're saying.
Wait, hang on. If we put a condition restricted use to just
exactly, we're giving you the ability to keep it and to improve it as an accessory structure, as a storage accessory structure, not as a pool house. If you sell it or promote it as a pool house, then the future buyer would have to get a variance to convert it to a pool house.
And that's what I'm saying is overly restrictive from my view as far as what.
But we're not banning a pool house.
I understand, but you're making go through the process again.
Well, but I don't think there's any way we can give it unrestricted.
I understand the restriction for accessory building. That is understood, and that's what it is. But you're redefining what an accessory building is now, and that's what I'm questioning.
But I know it sounds to me like maybe there's a potential for this to be a pool house in the future, or maybe that's what it's being sold as.
No. It's not being sold. It's just that is one use that I can foresee being attractive to a buyer, and you're. I understand you're not limiting it, but you're making it more difficult to get there.
Well, but they could very easily pull that structure out of the setback and have it built without having to come through a variance.
Yeah.
So we're not saying they can never have a pool house. They just can't use that particular building as a pool house without coming back to get a variance.
I understand, and I'm not. I mean, I understand what you're saying.
You're not happy with that restriction.
Yeah, exactly. I don't have to be. I'm not.
Right.
Have to be,
but I think it's our duty to look at all angles, and the neighbors are potentially what we're also looking at their point of view too. So,
and this just for clarity for everyone's purpose, this is a 32 by 40 existing barn.
Right.
Big.
That's big.
Mm-hmm. It's 2 stories?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big. But, okay. Any further closing comments? We certainly heard all your points. I make notes.
I just say that I'll probably, no, never mind. I won't be that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, don't put yourself on record if not necessarily. Okay. With that, I'll make a note that and if there are any final questions for staff, all right, I'll make a note public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
Can we have more discussion?
Once we get a motion, we can.
Okay.
In a second. So I'll throw one out there unless, Jason,
there's going to be a lot of verbiage, so I'm going to let you do that.
Thank you. All right. Great. All right. So I'm going to make a motion to approve V20-16 to allow an accessory structure to encroach into the rear yard setback with the following conditions. First condition is it's subject to size and location as noted on site plan, minor subdivision plat by Technical Survey Services, dated 6/24/20. I'd also add condition that on the recorded plat, as well as a recorded plat shall have notation that no horse or livestock shall be housed in an accessory structure. Third condition, upon sale, shall be noted as a deed restriction that no horse or livestock shall be housed in accessory structure. Fourth condition, limit the variance to the existing structure. The fifth condition, any modification or alterations to the structure shall be subject to architectural review by the City of Milton. And the fifth, no, I'm up to six, I think. Approved use as a storage accessory structure only.
But not restricted to the potential to be something else upon another variance. Is that
Leaving that open for discussion, we can always
okay?
amend.
Okay.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we are now in discussion.
So to protect Mr. Gray's point about devaluing the property, we're not forbidding the possibility of it becoming something other than a storage structure. But this particular structure cannot be converted to a pool house or any other structure but storage.
As it's currently, as my condition currently states, its approved use is as a storage accessory structure only. Okay. If we want to further clarify.
So then what would point six then just be redundant to that? If you're saying.
It wouldn't necessarily be redundant if you want to make a specific restriction to it not being used as a pool house, then we can make that, you can offer an amendment. I specifically left it open for discussion.
I guess what I'm trying to add, maybe the.
I don't know why, but I'm negative on this. I think they're capitalizing on this existing structure. They've decided to, subdivide this plot of land, and now they get an extra structure approved out, inside the setback that they would not normally get, just because it's already there. I can't imagine building a brand new house on a piece of property and leaving an old barn there looking like that. I'm concerned that it's 12 feet from the other property line, and that big structure is so large and so close to that neighbor. Unfortunately, that person is not here. I don't know how big their property is. But the existing plat is 2.595 acres, and then they've got this huge structure only 12 feet from the neighbor. So there's plenty of room there to get all that the way it's supposed to be. So am I not seeing this correctly?
Well,
no, that's a perspective.
But also it was there because of the previous parcel was much bigger.
Exactly.
But now that's the lots are working out.
It existed long before the City of Milton's ordinances became into play.
Right.
And so I thought that the whole reason for this application was to protect this old barn. I mean, that's what it says right here with the staff's response. This accessory structure keeps the character of rural Milton by preserving older structures and incorporating them into the property. So
in its current form and its current use.
And so we would grant that, here it is completely in this setback. But if another building, if they want it for some other purpose, there's plenty of land, like Kim said, to move it inside, and they won't need a variance. I don't see why we would have to allow them the opportunity to come back and get a variance to make it into something else.
Because we would not approve this if it was a new structure, correct?
Well, but I'm saying
there's
the
no
fact
hardship.
that you're banning it or forbidding it just puts a negative spin on the lot for someone trying to sell it.
Well, it's 2.5 acres. These are going to be beautiful homes, and I thought that the intent was for everybody to be able to see this beautiful barn. Here's these 3 houses here. That's what had been mentioned earlier. I didn't think that it was going to be used for something other than preserving this old barn.
So can you please, in order to narrow this discussion to an actual, what is the substance that you're looking to change or amend?
I just think I would grant the variance to allow the barn to stay there. I think any change or any other usage of this as a barn for storage, I don't think that that should be, granted. I think that if they want to build another structure as a pool house or something else, they can come inside of that setback. This is a complete structure inside the setback.
Are you looking then, so I think the point that most closely limits this use, for one, the variance is only to the structure as conditioned. If they demolish, they're going to have to get another variance if they want to go back in this location. The last restriction condition was approved use as a storage accessory structure only. Is that not clear enough, not restrictive enough? Are you looking to add to that?
No, that does sound clear to me. I guess if they want to come back, we would be here, or they'd go to whoever to get a permit to do whatever they needed to do. If they wanted to change the usage, they'd have to come and get another variance and prove a hardship, right?
Correct. That would be the threshold that, just like this variance is. So, just to reiterate, and hopefully we'll move to a vote, there's 6 conditions. One is size and location according to the plat, the minor subdivision plat. I'm paraphrasing. 2 was requiring that the horse and livestock restriction be noted on the plat. 3 was noting a deed restriction notation on horse and livestock restriction on the deed upon sale. 4 was condition any modification or alterations subject to city architectural review. 5 was limiting the variance to this existing structure. And 6 was limiting its approved use as a storage accessory structure only.
Okay.
That's what I motioned and seconded. Any further discussion? Okay, we'll be voting on the motion to approve with those 6 conditions. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? And motion carried, passed unanimous. The next item on our agenda is V20-17 Thompson Road. Would staff please present?
Case number V20-170 Thompson Road. The requested variance is to allow a new public street to be located 25 feet from any peripheral property line adjoining AG1 and residential zone property, section 64-2397. The site is a 12.257 acre lot that is located on the south side of Thompson Road. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the rural Milton overlay. The applicant is proposing to locate the entrance of a new proposed subdivision to be 25 feet from any peripheral AG1 and residential zone property instead of the required 50, Exhibit A. Section 64-2397 states that new public and private streets must be located a minimum of 50 feet from any peripheral property line adjoining AG1 and residentially zoned property. Since the applicant proposes a new public road to be 25 feet from any peripheral AG1 and residential zone property, a variance is required. On September 1st, 2020, the Design Review Board met and had the following comments. Support the variance, have the adjacent neighbor approve the variance, opposed to the variance, more heartfelt safety concern more than development problems, huge concerns having a driveway that close to Champions Club Drive, creates additional traffic, look into larger lots. This roadway is not the right fit for the community on Thompson Road. Work with the city to do larger lots. The applicant response, please see the letter of appeal attached in your packet. The staff response: the applicant is requesting this variance because of the site distance comment made by the Public Works Transportation review of the preliminary plat submittal. The required site distance for the property on Thompson Road is 500 feet. Exhibit B shows the proposed road without the variance, and the site distance is not met. Exhibit A shows the proposed road with the variance, and the site distance is met. However, the road is 25 feet from the property to the east. If the applicant pursues the large lot incentive, the applicant does not need the variance, and the minimum lot requirement shifts to 3 acres. The proposed road can be constructed into a driveway and does not need a variance. Allowing the location of the new public road from an AG1 and residentially zoned property will cause detriment to the public good. Public safety, health, and welfare will not be secured, and substantial justice will not be done for the surrounding properties. Staff recommends denial of this variance request. And just so the board knows, I did mark on the site plans Exhibit A and Exhibit B for easier. It should be in the top right-hand corner.
Can staff? I have a question. So we're questions for staff. I have a question regarding the staff's response, and specifically large lot incentive. Can you paraphrase what that is? And also the closing point is that the proposed road can be constructed into a driveway, which would not require a variance. Can you comment on both of those?
Okay, so the City Council, the Mayor and City Council have been working very hard to incentivize the development of larger lots in lieu of 1 acre lots. And so when they looked into these incentives, they said, geez, let's reduce the amount of requirements on larger lots to incentivize them. So part of that would be that you wouldn't have to build the road to city standards, which means the location of the road no longer has to meet the zoning requirements, which is what the problem is here tonight, the issue for this. You'd be able to eliminate curb and gutter. You'd be able to eliminate a detention pond. You'd be able to eliminate street lighting. And they've limited it to a maximum of 5 lots sizes, and the minimum lot size would be 3 acres. So in this particular case, they would be able to get 4 3-acre lots, put the road where it's shown, but only do it to driveway standards. It wouldn't have to be the street standard. So you wouldn't need the 50-foot right-of-way. They could just do a 25-foot wide driveway. Still meet fire department load requirements on the driveway, but it wouldn't have to meet the standards of subdivision regulations. And we've had a lot of people take advantage of this, and it's just something where the mayor and council really wanted to kind of incentivize larger lot development. So you'd have these 3-acre lots, which can be like mini farms, things like that, so that we don't end up with all this 1 acre subdivisions.
So that would allow this, if the applicant chose to pursue that they would end up with potential of up to 4 lots in here instead of 7, and they would have less infrastructure obligations since it would be a large lot incentive versus a subdivision.
Right.
Okay.
So the whole idea was that a developer wouldn't have to come in and put all this money in creating a pond, a detention pond, all the subsurface drainage piping, all the curb and gutter, all the roads, all the street lights, things of that nature. So that the council said, look, we can't really, we're not going to rezone it to make them 3 acres, but we'll give them enough incentive where on these smaller lots like this 12 acres, it would be that they would be able to subdivide this property up into larger lots, and they wouldn't have to put all that money up front. So yes, you'd get a few less lots, but you'd have so much less to be put in order to make the development.
Okay.
So it sort of blends it out.
All right, thank you for clarifying.
Yes.
All right, any other questions for staff?
I assume you've been working with this developer?
We did speak to this developer. He went in front of the DRB, and then we did speak to the real estate representatives as well. And,
So you offered this alternative?
and we did offer this alternative, there were several people at the DRB meeting speaking in opposition to it. So we said, look, you have another option, and this is an option that the mayor and city council's been trying to push. So it works here. In this particular case, it's perfect lot. We had a lot of concerns at DRB. The road is 45 miles an hour, and the line of sight is an issue to begin with, things like that. So we did try to work with the applicant.
Okay, thank you. With no more questions currently for staff, I'd ask the applicant to please come forward and share with us your plans. If you would please state your name and address for the record.
All right. I'm Kevin Reed with Reed Planning and Design, 100 Old Dawson Village Road in Dawsonville, Georgia. And I represent the purchaser of this property, the developer that would be proposing the subdivision.
Okay.
And the primary concern with the property is the safety of adding entrances or driveways. It doesn't really matter. There's a blind spot in the road, so to speak, due to a crest hill. And so we've worked with the planning department since April. We've had a courtesy plan review. They mentioned the incentive lots back as far as May, and we talked about it. But whether it's called a driveway or a road, you still can't see in that location unless you're 25 foot closer. At the 50-foot required location, there's still a sight distance shortage for a portion of the property. Now, it's possible we can move the roadway up toward the other end of the property, but that's that presents another safety conflict with Champion's driveway, our street, and the Little Stone Way Street. So we might get better sight distance up there, but there's already some concerns in that area. So there's three real concerns safety-wise as an engineer looking at this property, and that's driveway spacing, street spacing, and the sight distance. That's the two primary, and then the setback from the property line, which is what we're requesting variance of. And as you can see from Champions Club View and Stonehenge or Little Stone Way, those roads, whenever they were developed, permitted, they don't meet a 50-foot separation. They don't really meet street spacing separation, and I doubt seriously that Champions View meets the sight distance, that street intersection. Stonehenge can see pretty good, but so there's some existing safety conditions that were not they're not the fault of this property owner, and they're not the fault of the proposed development. So we're trying to work with this developer to try and present something. So we are proposing to move our driveway as far away from those other two streets as possible, but still meet sight distance requirement, which is the safety standard. In talking with planning during our review, we've actually been through the courtesy plan review. We've submitted preliminary plat review, gotten comments, addressed those, and have everything kind of okay except this variance. So it comes down to what's the best use. And during the DRB and with the planning staff, they indicate that, maybe our road and our subdivision is not the best use. But this is not a use discussion. This is a variance discussion, and that's what we said. The AG1 zoning allows subdivisions and streets and 1 acre minimum lots. Champions Club has, I think, 98 lots, all at 1 acre, 1 to 2 acre lots. Stonehenge across the street, 1 acre lots, 33 of them. And then my neighbor to the right, who this affects the most, is also a 1 acre lot. So there's very few 3 acre lots in the vicinity of this property. And so, again, even if we build a driveway, and I've heard something different tonight than at the last meeting. At the last meeting, we were told only 2 lots could share a driveway. They're saying maybe 4 lots could, but we wouldn't have to build curb and gutter.
I think I heard up to 5.
Yeah.
Is it part of the
Can they all use the same driveway?
That's correct, up to 5.
To 5.
But
Could they all use the same driveway? That was,
yes.
at the last meeting, they said only 2 lots could use a driveway.
No, that it would be, that's the purpose would be to have one driveway that's up to 5 lots, but
Right.
3 acres. So in this case, it would be 4 that could all share that driveway.
But they have to be 3 acre minimums, which
That's
in this
correct.
case would mean you could only yield 4 given the size of the property.
And again, now, the other part to that is financially, that kind of project doesn't work for my purchaser or the seller with their contract and what's on the board for them. I can't really speak to that. Maybe they will. But again, even though the driveway may not be subject to the 50-foot setback, it's still a major concern for sight distance and the safety on the street. And that's what my big concern is. And, we can go back, like I said, and try to move that driveway up closer and our street, up closer and maybe get it approved through planning without a variance. But I really believe this is the safest place to put the driveway and give us the best separation. And we're not doing 60 lots or anything. It's, it's 7 lots. So yes, it's more than 4 lots. But that's kind of the reasoning for our request. We're not trying to exceed the density of the property, of the AG1 zoning. I mean, we could squeeze 9 1 acre lots on here, but we're not trying to exceed that. We're just trying to do a reasonable project that we think would be a benefit. I mean, I don't know the size of the homes they want to build, but it's $1 million plus, nice homes. I mean, we're not trying to squeeze something tiny on here. So,
do you have anything more? I have a couple questions.
Go ahead.
One question is, you mentioned in your appeal applicant letter that you feel you've exhausted other remedies such as working with Champions Club to get an access
Yes.
to Champions Club Drive.
The purchasers' representatives reached out to Champions Club to see about accessing that road. Planning staff mentioned possibly an interparcel access, so we went to Champions Club, discussed it with them. We need about a 500 square foot section, and they were not interested really in helping. They said they would sell it to us for a very exorbitant amount. $250,000. That's as much as the property. So, I mean, you would lose lots. So we couldn't negotiate and work out a deal with Champions Club. We also went to the other neighbor, the 1 acre parcel to the right that most affects this, and we offered a potential small land swap where we would swap 25 foot of frontage, a triangle, so that we could meet the 50-foot distance, give them a sliver to make up that land, but then in addition, we would allow them an easement to access the internal street, and they also were not interested.
Okay.
Currently, their driveway, the one we're closest to, is about the center line of their drive is roughly 75 foot off the property corner. The center of our street with the variance would be 50 feet off the property corner. The right-of-way would be 25 feet. That's the variance. The 50-foot requirement is to the right-of-way of our street.
Right.
So with the variance, the street would be 125 feet from their driveway.
So the second point or question, actually comment, that I wanted to make is you felt like the use shouldn't be challenged here in this forum. I want to be abundantly clear. This board is not challenging the use.
Okay.
At all.
Okay.
It's AG1, but what we are charged with is ensuring that any variance applications meet all four of our considerations.
Understood.
And in this case, just to paraphrase, one is the spirit and intent of the ordinance. Two is, are there any extraordinary or exceptional situations that are for the property that are not caused by the applicant?
Right. Three
is substantial detriment to the public good, and four is public safety, health, and welfare are secured.
Okay.
And so we're charged with making sure that this variance meets all four of those considerations.
I understand.
And I think we're all seeing staff's commenting that there's a public safety concern. You're acknowledging that there is a public safety concern regarding the line of sight. So that's
with the variance, we would meet the site distance. The safety is the hardship case for this property. Without it, we could cut 4 lots. Yes, we don't need a variance to put 4 driveways out there. We could do individual driveways. But you're going to be creating more of a safety concern on that road by putting blind driveways that you can't see coming over that curve. It feels like a much safer to designate a place for them to pull in and out onto the street here with this frontage. Without it, the access gets very restricted to this property, and that's the concern for the sellers. And having a property that maybe they can't access, and what does that mean? And that's what we're concerned about, is trying to find a way, to help everybody. The spirit of the ordinance, again, I feel like the subdivision meets the spirit of the ordinance. The safety is the hardship, and then we're talking about the public safety and whether or not it's appropriate. The site issues that are out there, again, are existing conditions caused from previous. No, it's not part of our property owners that caused that.
Right, but actually it is by wanting to put this product in. And in order for you to meet the conditions of a subdivision of this size, is something that is imposed by the product that you're trying to build. That's so. The self-imposed thing is something that's I'm struggling getting over.
Well, and I'm just saying, even with the 4-lot large incentive, the same issue is there. It's not the number of lots that's causing that concern. The proposed development is not causing that concern. So if we have, that's still the best place to put the driveway, and it's still going to be an issue with the 4-lot subdivision. So, we're just trying to come up with the best way to access this property. Otherwise, we have a landlocked piece of property that's not, not easily usable. Or possibly usable.
I'd like to ask a question of staff while you're here,
okay,
so that you can, as an alternative, as the city has suggested, as an alternative, this large lot incentive with a driveway. Would a driveway be allowed in the general area of this street as proposed by the applicant? In other words, would a driveway be allowed 25 foot from an adjacent property line?
The location of the driveway would be very similar to what he's showing. The difference is that you'd have a driveway entrance instead of a city street entrance, or even a private street. It would be a street entrance.
And you'd have 4 homes instead of 7.
And you'd only have 4 homes instead of 7. So you have deliveries, you have visitors, you have people coming in and out, and it would just reduce the
and could that driveway be 20 foot wide for two-way traffic to get in and out. We don't want a problem of a vehicle trying to turn in and one trying to turn out and backing up.
The driveway most likely would be at least 24 feet wide to meet. It still has to meet fire standard.
So it would still be basically a road. It would just be designated as a driveway. And it would not require the variance. Is that?
That's great. It would be as of right. So he would no longer need the variance. And that's what I explained to him, is that they wouldn't need to be here tonight. They would just be able to go right to do the subdivision and get the approval as of right.
I'm taking the time on this one because I'm understanding that some of this is newer information from the DRB meeting.
Yes, this is very different, and a little bit different.
And it's a very important part of this project as well as our decision.
Right.
So I want to make sure you understand all the options and alternatives.
The difference was at the DRB, it was mentioned, he said, can I just put in 4 individual driveways? And they said, well, you could do a maximum 2 lots per driveway.
That was the misunderstanding.
But that's just generally doing straight out subdivision. That's not using the large lot incentive.
Okay. And then the other question I wanted to ask of staff for you to hear as well, is it unfair or unrealistic to expect that the city could actually participate in a discussion with Champions regarding access? Is that
generally don't? It's up to the HOA to work with the applicant.
Okay.
It's their land. If the HOA was to agree to it, then yes, the city would enter into discussions to make sure that we do it the best way we can.
Okay.
And that was our initial hope, was to access that road. We have, I don't know, I can't remember, maybe up to close to 1,000 feet along their road. They retained a 10-foot strip that bars access to the road. So that's kind of the issue.
So
but
I'm wondering, though, if you now, with this large lot potential incentive, if there's an opportunity for you to go back to them and say, listen, we're actually looking at a different product. It's a driveway access versus a street cutout.
It was discussed, to my knowledge, and they just weren't interested in working with us at all.
And the fact that you may be looking at 3-acre lots there versus 1-acre lots?
Like I said, we wouldn't be under the control of their situation, I think, was their concern, and so they just made it very difficult. However, the planning currently has regs that really encourage and try to encourage interparcel access up near the 50-foot, up near the road. But we've been unsuccessful to this point.
I'm speaking this hoping that there is either someone listening here in person or online. Okay?
I don't know that. Yep, I don't know that.
Because I also hear your point that there is a safety concern regardless if it's a driveway or a street.
And even for the neighbors, maybe it doesn't require a variance, but then we're still going to be 25 foot off their line with the road because that's where it has to go. So we're still going to be in that location. It might just be 2 less lots, or 3 less lots, but
right.
It's still going to be an issue for them where we locate.
I feel like I've asked a lot of questions of this applicant. Are there any other questions?
I kind of wanted to hear from, like you said, public comment. Before I
see what the sentiment. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have any further points to make?
No.
So you've seen the process here. We'll hear from the public. You'll have a chance to make any closing comments. We may have some other questions as well.
All right.
Okay. With that, make note that we will open the floor for public comment. 10-minute sessions first to speak in favor, followed by a 10-minute session to speak in opposition. If anyone is joining via Zoom or phone, if you're on Zoom and you wish to participate in public comment, click on the icon labeled Participants at the bottom of your screen, and then click the button labeled Raise Your Hand. If you're on the phone, press *9 on your keypad to let us know you wish to speak, and then *6 to unmute your phone. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of V20-17? please come forward. Have you filled out a yellow comment card?
I have, sir.
If you'd please just state your name and address for the record.
My name is Wanda Fitzhugh, and I'm a realtor with C21 Results Realty Services, and my address is 6675 Waterbury Way, Cumming, Georgia. I appreciate y'all taking the time to listen tonight, and just so you know, the goal here is to enhance and improve the current trends in Milton with this development, okay? And I represent the sellers of the property. And the existing ordinance, of course, is a 1 acre minimum for one home. And I've done some research, and there are 4 subdivisions on Thompson Road between Little Stone Way, Champions Club Drive, which are across from each other, all the way up to Francis Road. And those are Champions View, Bentgrass Farms, McGinnis Farms, and Stonehenge. Between those 4 properties, there are approximately 179 home sites. And these 4 developments all have properties in them that are less than 1 acre. Some of them are 0.89, 0.98, 0.99. That's the least part of them. There's just a few in each one of them that have less than 1 acre. The rest of the lots are slightly 1 acre or over, with the exception being Bentgrass, and there are 2 to 3 lots in there that are over 2 acres. There are 19, I believe approximately 19 parcels of property that are not in an HOA development, meaning just separate parcels of property between Little Stone Way, Champions Club View, and Francis Road, from in that distance on Thompson Road. And let's see. And there's only 3 of those parcels that consist of more than 3 acres. The 7 lots being proposed on the 12.257 acre parcel are compatible to the existing lots in these 4 subdivisions. The highest and best use for this parcel points to the developer's current concept presented to the city. All 7 lots are in the current plan are over 1 acre, and I believe they're about an average, the engineer said, I believe an average of 1.4 acres. And this is definitely keeping with the current spirit of the existing ordinance. Currently, right now, there is no egress or ingress to the 12.257 acre parcel, which in and of itself is inconsistent with both physical and economic factors of land use. There is a generally recognized concept across this country that states that any land should be utilized at its highest and best use. All efforts, as Kevin had said earlier, have been exhausted with respect to seeking an easement from an adjoining property. Of course, the variance that was requested was definitely for the public safety, health, and welfare of all the residents and the traffic that goes up and down Thompson Road. The request for the variance was to get the 500-foot sight distance. And, of course, I know that's, what we're all here for. So, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online or Zoom?
Not in for favor. We're in support. There's none for support.
Okay.
Or are you?
We have one more for support. Are you in favor or in opposition? Both. Okay, come speak. And you're trying to keep things on schedule. You only have a few minutes left here.
My name is Rob Pippins, and I represent the Champions HOA.
I figured someone might be here.
We're in favor. It's a great idea. I just wanted to further that there was an offer made from them to the HOA for the amounts that he said. It was countered at $1,000, and we never heard anything else. That was it. That's all they did with us.
Okay.
So there wasn't any other discussion or further discussion or any kind of exhausting all options.
Okay. I'm curious, based on what you heard tonight and the alternatives that the city has suggested, that I spoke to as well, do you feel there's an opportunity to reach an agreement with your HOA for driveway access for up to 4 lots?
There absolutely could be.
Economically speaking?
Yes.
Okay.
There could definitely be a further discussion.
Okay. I would hope that you would exchange information with this applicant, regardless of how this goes, because it certainly impacts your community, your subdivision, greatly. So,
okay.
Thank you for coming to speak. That was, you're right, that was kind of in the middle of the road, sort of in favor or against. You were right in the middle.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else here wishing to speak in favor of this application? Okay, we'll move then to anyone here wishing to speak in opposition. Again, a combined 10 minutes. Please be sensitive to others who may wish to speak and not repeat the same things.
Do you wish to start with Zoom first or with the public?
Is there anyone here in person?
Yeah,
Let's start in person. I
Okay.
figure we might have a number.
All right. So the first is Deborah Braun.
If you please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, thank you. Put my glasses on so I can see. Sorry. Thank you. My name is Deborah Braun. I live at 15805 Thompson Road. We've been there for about 3.5 years and lived in the general area for 20 now. The points that I'd like to state, and we are on a 3-acre, so there are acreage near this property, unlike somebody had said previously. Number
and
one,
you abut this parcel, correct?
I'm sorry?
You're adjacent to this parcel?
Well, so there's a home that is currently being built there, and we are right next to that home. So prior to that, we would be adjacent to it, but now there's this other 1 acre that's being built right now. And those folks are here tonight as well. But again, I mean, you know, the law and these variances have been put in place to protect both our safety and the aesthetics of the area that we chose to move into. When we talk about I'll talk about when we were approached to consider this as neighbors, if you will. One, we had a realtor approach us who did not tell us what it was about, indicated that it was some property further down the road, and, you know, could we just help and do this, that, and the other. I guess when I realized what it was, I said, oh my gosh, you're totally standing in front of my door, fibbing to me about what you're asking me to sign and not being legit about it. The signage itself, so there, like I say, there's a 1 acre being built, and so there's like this little green sign that almost looks like it's incorporated into the new home that's being built, so you wouldn't even notice it, only because the realtor had approached our house very inappropriately. My husband said, look for the sign, because we're going to need to look for that sign now, and again, it's kind of hidden to where this new development is. And then even when we were at the September 1 meeting, I mean, just there's a way to do things, I guess, and that stands with me, so to speak, but it got almost violent outside. I mean, I literally came in to get the police officer because the parties that have spoken were saying, how could you say that? We didn't say that to you. I mean, it was really ugly and uncomfortable. And then I also think, to my knowledge, because we have, as neighbors have gotten together, I'm the only one that has received this particular notice so far for whatever reason. That's a little bit adjacent property owner. So I'm the only one that's received this formally to be aware of it.
Are you talking about the
it talks about tonight's meeting in a little bit more detail, you know, about being here at 6 o'clock, et cetera.
Public notice from the
Public
city.
notice, and no one else has received this for whatever reason.
So go ahead. I'll comment on that.
Okay. And then, I mean, just to speak of the safety issues, you know, I mean, I have a family there. We have a small farm. That road is fast and busy, and I can attest to that every day. I mean, I have 2 teenage drivers. there was a fatal accident that was a combination of Thompson and Francis that my daughter was almost involved with. And it was just literally speeding down the road, and a guy came off of the property, and I had several people visiting me that day. And I mean, I had between my daughter and 3 people that happened to be visiting me that day, they all witnessed that fatal injury because of speed and the blind spots there. When you pull out of my driveway, and we have a horse trailer, my daughter drove it for the first time last week just to go to our friend's house on Thompson Road. You get ready to pull out, you look, and then you better go, because that's your only chance. I mean, that's how dangerous it is right now. So, thinking about not abiding by variances that we put in place to help us with that scares me even that much more so. I just get a general feeling that they kind of know that, because now that I hear, Champions Club, I mean, we were told that they denied it. And part of me thought, well, gosh, if they were allowed to deny it, then so as neighbors, are we allowed that same privilege? And, apparently, I don't know, we're just being disrespected in the sense of the opportunities offered. I mean, we were deceived, and I know my other neighbors will speak to the effect that they were deceived and the way we've been treated and really verbally abused. And then Champions Club doesn't sound like they were maybe made a great offer either. So it certainly hasn't started out being in a good spirit. And thank you for your time very much.
Hope you feel more comfortable in tonight's meeting.
Thank you. I hope so.
Okay, with the next, you can call the next.
The next is Ashley Nematahali.
And we're about 5 minutes into this. If you could please be sensitive to repeating.
Yeah, I understand.
Themes. Ashley, name and address for the record.
Ashley Nematalahi, 310 Traditions Court, Alpharetta. Thank you for your time. I do want to be quick. We are the 15795, which is the property that is going to be affected with this variance. So our driveway will be extremely close to what they are requesting a variance for. My, of course, biggest concern is safety. My parents will be living there. My dad has a left 80% blind eye, and I do have an uncle who is also handicapped, so there will be a lot of going in and out of this driveway, and my concern is if someone's trying to come in and they're trying to come out, it's like it will literally be a highway in front of their home.
So are you across the street?
No, we're right next door. We are the property, that 1 acre lot that's currently being worked on to have a home put on it. It's right to the right.
For your parents, right?
For my parents, yes.
Is it listed as
15795?
Wolgamuth?
No.
All right, then we're not clear.
That is the property. I don't know when the property was purchased, but when the survey was probably done, that was probably the current owner at the.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're this corner parcel immediately adjacent to what?
Correct, immediately adjacent. Exactly.
Thank you for.
The property that they went to.
So about the sliver?
Yeah.
Yes. So they discussed about this. It's literally a sliver, nothing that can be used, taking away from our frontage and then wanting us to be a part of the neighborhood. I mean, the reason we came to Milton was to have that privacy and not to lose the frontage and be able to get into our property appropriately. Additionally, that meeting, it was the seller did approach my father very aggressively. And like Deborah mentioned, it was about to get really ugly. So we kind of all stopped it. But just saying, oh, we offered this, we did that. But it was just like a one-time, oh, here's this, this. And then we were like, well, but why? And there was nothing else said to us. So it was extremely inappropriate type of harassment, in my opinion, that day. So I will stop there so I don't take any more time. Thank you.
Thank you for coming to speak. I know it's difficult to do that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, next is Mohsen Nematahali.
Hi, my name is Mohsen Nematahali. As you can see on the drawing, I just bought that property, 1 acre to the land, and as my daughter mentioned, I have a problem with my left eye, and I have a brother that is handicapped.
pause for 1 second? I'm sorry. Can you
Yes, sir.
please state your name and address for the record?
Mohsen Nematollahi, Mohsen. The last name is Nematollalhi.
And the address?
Is the new address?
Yes.
Is 15795, I guess.
Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I think everybody's talking about the safety, and they want to get the variance for that. This is not safe. As it is right now, that I am getting in and out for the construction things, and all the construction people that they want to take the truck in and out, they stay there like 20 minutes to make sure when they get exit, they don't get to any accident. And with my situation right now, I have a very hard time to get in and out the property. Imagine if they come close and they open another road to mine, it's going to be parking lot in front of my house every day. And I don't know, I don't think it's going to be safe.
Understood.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jack Walsh.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Jack Walsh, 200 Champions Fairway Court.
How do you spell your last name?
WALSH.
So not that guy.
No.
Jack Welch.
I'm directly at the south end, adjacent to this parcel in question.
I can see you. Yes.
I have all kinds of objections to the use of this, but I understand that the use is not the scope of this meeting, it's the variance. So I'm going to limit my comments very briefly to one of the bullet points that you consider when considering whether to give the variance or not, which is whether the relief if granted causes substantial detriment to the public good and surrounding properties. Well, I am a surrounding property. I am the one who will have a 1.5 acre detention pond 30 feet behind his property. To me, there is a premium built into the value of our homes. Our 4 homes that are on the south end of this property all back up to nothing but forest. That's value. Rob, my neighbor, his house backs up to a golf course. There's value in that. There's no value in a detention pond 30 feet behind your property line. Absolutely none. So while the variance, that has to do with the use, but they can't do the use if you don't give the variance. It seems to me in the previous case with the barn, you're giving the variance and that's a win-win. The developer wins, the community wins because the old rural barn gets to stay. This is a win-lose. All of the properties along Champions Club Drive, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, plus the 4 on the south end, we're going to have a monstrosity of a detention pond and a subdivision crammed into a small piece of land. I mean, yes, they're nice sized lots, but that's a detriment to us. So I will leave my comments at that. I would not be necessarily opposed to the larger lot possibility as long as there was no detention pond in my backyard. So,
did you receive a notification from the city?
I did.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Ashley, did you guys receive a notification from the city? I think we understand why. It's a change of title issue. We go off the recorded deed and timing of that. I suspect that's why. Would you agree, Cody?
Yeah, so we pull all of our addressing off of Fulton County Tax Digest. So we pull it off of the previous year or the most current year, and depending on when.
So apologies, with the recent sales transaction, we didn't have record. The city didn't have record. Anyone else here to speak against?
Yes, I apologize, I can't read your last name. Joe?
If you'd please state your name and address.
Absolutely. Joe Cotnor, 15835 on Thompson. So 2 parcels over, not on the map, adjacent to the other farm, Debbie there. So all the other comments, I'll agree with, but I'm just going to stick to purely the variance. and the safety aspect of the variance. I was here at the last meeting. I could not find anywhere online or the specifics, but I believe where the driveway is right now will be exactly at 500 site distance. If we can clarify that at some point, that would be good to know the exact site distance. I think the point number D, where the public welfare, health, and safety is secured, I would disagree that this would be a point that would be met if we did put that road in there. Anybody that's traveled Thompson Road, you know the speed limit is 45. I would argue anyone to find us anybody that goes less than 50 and 55 on that road. Pulling up the site distance requirements for Georgia, which I believe Milton has. The Milton website was not working for the ordinance to see if that matches Georgia.gov, but if it does, at 50 miles an hour, the site distance, safe site distance, is actually 550 feet, and at 55, which I believe everybody can agree the majority of people going down Thompson Road is pretty darn close to 55 or above, is actually 610. So putting in this road there, I think at the bare minimum, is a disservice to the community, to the safety of the community. I don't disagree that they should have absolutely every right to build and develop there. I think there's probably safer ways to do it, and economical ways that everybody can still win without inhibiting the safety. And again, to actually add 110 site distance from there at probably the average speed of the road, I think is a very big safety detriment there on point D. So I'll leave it at that as well there too. If we could clarify the exact site distance, I could not find that on all of the documents, but could be a user error. Thank you.
I've taken the liberty in allowing the comments to go over the 10 minutes. We're actually at 15 minutes. How many more do we have?
I just have one participant on Zoom.
Okay. Would you prefer I seek a motion to extend this, or are we fine just moving forward?
Why don't you go ahead and do a motion at this point to extend it for the period that you have extended plus?
All right, I would make a motion to extend the public comment period to allow for additional opposition to speak for no greater than 10 minutes, which would yield us 4 minutes of time for this last applicant.
Second.
Any discussion?
And that would, of course, apply equally to those in favor.
And that's an important point. If there is any in favor, I will grant that same 4-minute additional. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passed unanimous. If you please announce the next individual.
Yes, we have a Stephen Braun on Zoom. I am going to I'm sorry.
Stephen Braun, is there a relationship? Okay.
He wasn't feeling well, so he needed to stay in the house.
Okay.
Cody. All right, if you could please try to speak up. We can hear you, but not great. Go ahead. Okay, thank you. And we are right at the extension time. Is there any additional to speak in opposition?
That was the only one.
All right, to honor our motion, is there anyone here to speak in favor? I'll grant an additional 4 minutes for that group as well.
I think technically it should be 10. I think you extended it for.
Oh, you're right, I did. There was a net of 4 because we were over. I don't hear or see any interest in speaking in favor. Just to address a couple points that were brought up. One was to confirm the minimum site distance.
Do you want to give the applicant rebuttal?
I just want to confirm that before the rebuttal. The minimum site distance is 500 feet. Is that correct? And the placement of this driveway is at how many feet? I'm sorry, this street, subdivision street, is it at the 500-foot site distance? That was a question. I don't see reference to it in here.
There's a site distance in red right by the
480. I see it at 480.
Yes, so if you do Exhibit A, that is the one that is requesting the variance. If you look on right near Little Stone Way, it says site distance equals 500 feet. And then if you go just to the right of the Kelly Walgameth property, you're going to see it says sight line distance equals 500 feet plus.
Okay.
So that it states the site distance.
It's right at the minimum required site distance.
Correct. Going.
Open question.
Yes.
Thank you. I also want to make clear for everyone that's viewing or here in person, we do have access to the video and comments from the DRB as well. I think that was a question that was brought up earlier. Okay, the applicant does have an opportunity for any closing comments prior to us closing the public comment and moving to a motion. Would you care to comment? And it's Mr. Reed, correct?
I just wanted to, say that we are, sensitive to the opposition's concerns. Should this subdivision move forward, we would intend to meet all the rules and regulations, site distance, detention ponds, landscape, and try to save as many trees. We've talked about that a little bit with planning. We're not that far along. So, we recognize that we'd be subject to all of that. Can't really speak to any interactions with the brokers. I haven't been involved, so I'm not that, that sure. But again, going back to the safety of this, short of accessing Champions Club, which might be another option for us to revisit, but short of accessing Champions Club, still feel like this is probably the best location for an access point for this property. So just want to make that clear.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Reed. So if there's no further questions, then I will make note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second. I'll make a motion on V20-17 to deny. Do I have a second?
A second.
I don't feel it passes the 4 criteria, and certainly the safety issue being one of them. I do believe there's alternatives which suggest that this as a product is self-imposed. I do acknowledge that any access along Thompson Road for a subdivision and or driveway would be challenging. But at least with a driveway, it would be less access in terms of number of parcels. And ideally, the applicant looks to revisit with Champions Club on an alternative, as well as the city's suggestion of larger lots. Any other discussion?
I just wanted to clarify with staff.
We closed that portion.
Or not clarify with staff, but clarify with the public comments.
Okay. Yeah.
That with the 4 lots to the people immediately to the right, they still would have the right to put the driveway right up on your property. So it would not eliminate that point. And to the point of the retention pond or detention pond, they could still put the detention pond there as well. So you would not be, you wouldn't escape that. So having said all that, the point is, all you're really preventing is the 7 lots, which if that's the goal, then that may be what you've achieved. But there is going to be potential there for the concerns you may have still would be there, is all I'm saying.
They could be there, yes.
Could be there,
Now,
just to clarify.
Did you understand from the staff's comment that with the large lot incentive, in this case yielding 4 lots, that they would not be required to have a detention pond?
No, I did not. That's what I was going to.
They did not.
Okay.
You would not.
So then that may then benefit.
Which is less investment in infrastructure as well for the developer. But thank you for clarifying for the public's purpose.
Right.
We are hearing you. Okay, if there's no further discussion, the motion is to deny. It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion to deny passed unanimous. Thank you for the public who's come here to speak. I know it's
Just to be
difficult
clear,
speak.
the motion was approved
To deny. Sorry if I misspoke. The next item on our agenda is V20-18, 3430 Bethany Bend. Could staff please present?
Yes, I'll just wait till everybody. All right. Case number V20-18, 3430 Bethany Bend. The requested variances is to reduce the side yard setback from 25 feet to 12 feet, section 64-416, C1, and to allow a stone masonry material under the 3 4-board horse fence along a public road, section 64-1092I.
Cody, sorry to interrupt you. Can I make a motion for a 5-minute recess? Do I have a second?
Yes.
We are, take a vote then for a 5-minute recess. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are in recess for 5 minutes.
missed the. I wanted to clarify that.
It's okay.
And because that's one thing that I didn't hear on the pond.
That's fine.
Well, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, you see both sides. That's what's hard for me too. Yes. What is this? Right.
Yeah, I need you looking at this. I need to make sure you have this. Really because of that.
I know that. Especially this one. Right. Understood. Yes. Got it.
He's gotten to you, huh?
Oh, yeah. But also, something's got to be looked at.
Yes.
For future.
Yes. There's no but.
Yeah.
Or
there are no exceptions.
exception clause, yes. Or discretion.
I agree. Exactly. I mean, some of this has got to, you got to get common sense. Yeah, sure. You think you're going to go out of here? Yeah, exactly right.
Do we have everyone back?
Oh, excellent.
Okay, I'll make, I believe the proper protocol is to make note that we have returned from recess. We're back in session.
We're back in.
We are back in session. The recording is on.
Case number V20-183430 Bethany Bend. The requested variances is to reduce the side yard setback from 25 feet to 12 feet, section 64-416C1, and to allow a stone masonry material under the 3-4 board horse fence along a public road, section 64-1092I. The site is a 0.6943 acre lot located on the north side of Bethany Bend. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the State Route 9 overlay. The applicant is proposing to add on to the existing house, which will encroach into the side yard setback, Exhibit A. The applicant is also proposing to construct a knee wall that will be under the 3-4 board horse fence that will be installed along the front of the property, Exhibit A. Section 64-416C1 states that the minimum side yard shall be 25 feet when it is adjacent to an interior line in AG1. Section 64-1092I states fencing in the State Route 9 overlay along public streets. Fencing material shall be primarily dark stained wood and could include accents of natural or man-made stone, brick, aluminum, ornamental, or decorative wrought iron or architectural concrete. Since the applicant proposes to encroach to the side yard setback with a house addition and add a knee wall under the 3-4 board horse fence along the front of the property, a two-part variance is required. On September 1st, 2020, the Design Review Board met and had the following comments. Work with staff on the site plan to make the material real stone for the material under the fence. The applicant responds. Please see the letter of appeal attached in your packet. Part 1. The variance request the applicant is proposing can be erased if the addition can be added to the structure on the west side or shifting the addition towards Bethany Bend. There is no hardship because the proposed addition can be repositioned to be in conformance to the setbacks. Part 2, the proposed knee wall under the fence does not conform to the area, and the ordinance does not allow, and the ordinance does allow stone accent on fences. There is no hardship for allowing a knee wall under the 3/4 horse fencing along the front of the property. Allowing the encroachment of the addition of the house into the side yard setback and the proposed knee wall under the 3/4 board horse fence along the front of the property will cause detriment to the public good. Public safety, health, and welfare will not be secured, and substantial justice will not be done for the surrounding properties. Staff recommends denial of the two-part variance request.
I have one question for staff before we ask the applicant to come forward. In the staff's response, it says there's options to either relocate to the west side or shift the addition. Bob, can you speak to the options to avoid the variance request on the structure?
We looked at this when we did try to work with the staffs, with the applicant's architect, and what we suggested here was either you could add on to the west side, which has got plenty of room, or you can just take the proposed addition that he's looking to do and shift it slightly forward and you're still within the front yard setback area. So you could shift that whole block forward and thus reducing that pinch point in the back, and it would eliminate the need for a variance altogether. And that area, what they're proposing to do is a garage. So there's no reason why, it's a two-car garage. That garage can just be shifted forward a little bit. And it would totally reduce the need for a variance.
In a side load garage, what's the typical offset that you would need to make turn into that garage?
Generally, it's minimum 25, but it should be closer to 30 feet to really have.
So it wouldn't be very functional at that. They're going to be within 25 feet.
I think it would be very difficult. I know that I asked the applicant, he said he really wanted a side entry garage, but I think by shifting it forward, then it would give him that additional turnaround, turning in and turning back out when you're backing out. It would give them the additional, so it really works. Not only does it reduce or totally eliminate the need for a variance, but it would also give them much more functionality getting in and out of that garage.
Okay, and since I'm talking to you as the architect, in our packet was sketches or renderings of the potential design of the home. We're not here looking at the designs. Those would have to go through architectural review, yes or no?
That's correct.
They would have to go through architecture. So we're merely looking at the footprint encroachment as it relates to the structure.
Right. Yeah, I already spoke to the applicant about the design would have to be enhanced.
So in your opinion, there's alternatives to avoid this variance without being a substantial economic or other issue for the applicant?
Yes. Very easily achieved, too.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? I'd ask the applicant to please come forward and share with us your plans.
Not to confuse you with the previous applicant, but my name is Stuart Rees, R-E-E-S, and I'm with Align Design Associates. We're located at 145 Church Street, Suite 230, Marietta, Georgia 30060. And as Bob already mentioned, we're here to seek two variances. And so Cody is assisting me right now because we did want to supply some supplemental information, some of which was not available when we presented at DRB, just to make certain things more clear. We would like to begin by saying that this is one of two lots in the area that is zoned agricultural. Most of the lots, if you can see the exhibit on the bottom right is residential, which allows you to get a lot closer to the setback. Because this is an agricultural lot, what this is forcing us to do is comply with a 25-foot side setback. And really what's going on right now in terms of the house footprint is we would really like to add the garage on one side without having to move too far to the left. The primary reason that we're saying that's hard is if we could flip forward to the third page, Cody. You can see right here, these are pictures of the house. There's a significant amount of fall on the front side as well as on the left side, or the north side. And along with that, there's a fair amount of landscaping that's coming from the neighbor's trees. Their foliage are coming over onto this homeowner's lot, which means if you do extend too far over, that becomes problematic when you're getting into the landscaping there. In addition to that, these pictures down the middle show there's about a 4 to 5 foot fall if you're standing at the face of the house. It dips down 4 to 5 feet and comes back up. So our contention there is if we're able to primarily build on the right side of the house, that would be slab on grade, 2-story wood frame construction. We have to build on the left side. We're now looking at potentially retaining walls. We're getting into the soil. We're having to do block and all that kind of stuff. With that said, I spoke with the owner after the DRB because we were requesting a 12-foot setback, and I believe some of the points that were mentioned tonight were very valid as far as perhaps getting a little too close. And so what we decided is we could safely move it over 5 feet and just ask for 17 feet on the side, which is within a couple feet of the administrative variance which is allowed, which would be 22.5 feet in this case, or 10% of the 25 feet. So that is the first part. And then the last thing I want to mention, if you could go back, Cody, to the first page, part of the hardship that we're dealing with, I mentioned the lot size is 0.69 acres. The minimum lot for an agricultural AG1 zone lot is 1 acre, which is about a 13,500 square foot reduction of what we've got. And this picture shows you if we were given the full lot size, I would have no problem complying with any setback. In fact, if I just had half the 7,000 or whatever square foot that would be, I would still be able to comply with the setback. So again, part of this that we're seeking is not because we couldn't just easily move the house over. It really has to do more with the topography and the landscaping that's currently on the site, as well as the fact that this is a non-conforming lot in an agricultural zoned property. I'd be happy to go into the fence as well, but I didn't know if you wanted to first. Okay. Cody, if you could skip forward, actually stay on this page. This first image is really the desire for the homeowner with this fence. Again, the design is really born from the fact that we wanted something more like a Mediterranean-inspired villa, which is something when we did some research, some of even Frank Lloyd Wright's followers, architects, design homes like this, and so we were inspired by that. If you skip forward 3 sheets. Yes, you can see right here there's a number of really nice signs going into some of the subdivisions that have these nice stone bases that we're talking about. There's also a number of other signs that are either chain link or the farm fence that were discussed. We just feel like those wouldn't be as related to what we're trying to accomplish with the building. In fact, if you go to the next slide, Cody, you can see that these are actually some of the adjacent fences, which are not, no offense to anybody who lives at any of these homes, these aren't as desirable in our opinion. Some are chain link, some are the farm fence with the post, with the gap in between. Some are just the typical residential, which again, close off a lot of what you would see in there. And that is the context of where this property is located. Next sheet. While we're not discussing the design of this, and I recognize this will be reviewed by the Architecture Review Board, it is worth noting that what we're trying to do, because this is a 2-story, about a 3,000 square foot house, we didn't want it just to look like a brick mass. We wanted it to break up. And sticking with the language that we had discussed, we have about 2 feet there, 2 to 3 feet at the bottom, which is stone. And then if you go to the next sheet, that's kind of a rendering of what it would look on the side. So our opinion is, while the farm fence makes sense if you're talking about a farm or a small house, really what we're trying to do here is relate the fence to the property. And again, he's paying at a premium to get this fence, and that's really more of a design-inspired thing, which I think he should be commended for. Lastly, if we could go to the floor plan. It was mentioned about moving the garage forward. We are aware of where the house sits on the site. If you look at this floor plan, the garage is really just that lower right quadrant. What's going on behind it is he's an electrician by trade. He has a fair amount of construction-related tools he needs to keep. That's a storage area. That dashed line, about 3/4 of the way from the left, is the footprint of the existing house. So really, we're cutting into what's existing. We're adding a 2-car garage, and then if you go to the next slide of what's above it, you can see really that space is being used for guest bedrooms and bathrooms, and he does enjoy entertaining family and friends. So it's not like it's just the garage, which is dictating we could easily move it forward or do something like that. There are accessory spaces to that garage which had to be considered. And then lastly, I think these are just elevations of the house, which were already spoken about.
Okay. Are there any questions for the applicant?
Who is on Who is on the side where you're making this addition to?
It's another agricultural lot. It's one of the 2 agricultural lots in the whole area.
Did you talk to them about?
We did. I don't have anything in writing, but the homeowner did ask him verbally, and he said he was actually didn't have any problem with it. Actually, he is happy that they're building a nice house, and that will increase the value of the area and their property.
Is this a new homeowner?
Yeah, but he owns the home, and
I mean, the people, this existing home, is this new bought, and now they're changing it?
Yeah, they bought it, they purchased it, and now they're looking to renovate it.
Okay.
And the reason he's seeking a variance is he's paying a mortgage on it, so he's trying to go as fast as possible.
This is really more a question for staff. Do we have the new proposed site plan with the 17-foot versus the 12? I mean, I know you showed it to us here on the screen.
That was my question too. Is how are you going to just reduce it by 5 feet?
I'm moving it 5 feet. So the total amount I was asking was 13 plus. I needed to add 18 feet to the footprint of the building to make what we were trying to do to the house work as far as adding a 2-car garage.
So but I'm saying, are you going to shift because
you're shifting the entire structure to the west by 5 feet?
5 feet, that's correct.
Now it's no longer going to be in line. This back portion from the existing home is going to be shifted out 5 feet?
That's correct. Everything's shifted up 5 feet. And so what that does, because the setback is particularly onerous on the backside of the property, that's the pinch point, that backside.
So you're shifting it towards the street, or you're shifting it towards the?
I'm shifting it towards the north property.
So which is, if you're looking from the street, is to the left.
That's correct.
You're shifting it to the left.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the question still stands: do we have revised site plans to this?
I did submit them, but it was today, so.
Okay.
So this variance is changing, your requested variance?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So the setback to now 17 feet?
And this was a recent negotiation, again, with the client, understanding what came out of DRB. So there was some back and forth. We had to go to the site. We had to kind of measure what was reasonable without getting into where the neighbor's trees were and having to do more considerable foundation work.
So you had the benefit of hearing our hearing tonight.
Yes.
Understand that we have 4 considerations that we evaluate these cases on. You know, the staff's position is regarding the structure is that it can be shifted to be out of the setback. Staff's position is also that there's no hardship specific to the fence.
Right.
And wanting this knee wall. Can you respond to that and help?
Again, part of this is because the owner is trying to have money well spent. And he's trying to put a lot of money, again, and I'm happy to work with a client like this, into a good, well-designed house and a fence. And so because of that, we're trying to avoid having him to spend money on other things like additional foundation work or now moving the footprint forward, because with where we were doing, we were at least trying to keep that front line where he's got his entry porch, where he's got his walkway to the driveway. I get that's not a ton of money to change that, but again, that was things we were hoping to avoid doing. And again, by moving it forward, you're again taking on a little more topography on the front, but especially on the side.
But I think, what about the knee wall?
The knee wall, I would argue, is a design hope. Because again, if you could go back, Cody, to what we're trying to do with the house, we're trying to relate the fence to the house. And if we do what is in the zoning, which is just the horse fence, which again is more applicable to a true agricultural use, we just feel like it doesn't fit in with what we're trying to do here. And I think the owner would be very disappointed if that was the only fence he could put up in front of his house. And again, or if I could just make one comment,
Sure.
I apologize. We're talking about 18 inches of stone. We're real stone. We're not talking about a tiled stone. We're not talking about anything else. And I think if you consider the context, so the comment was made about the context, there's a lot of context in the area that shows a well stone base, which I think looks nice.
What does the ordinance allow for in this area, or what does it require, I guess is a better question. Is the applicant required to put a fence along the front property line
No.
in this area?
No. But if they do,
if they do, it's
a full board horse fence, and the ordinance does allow for like stone piers, and which is what you saw the pictures of. You know, they put like a stone pier.
What is the street frontage? It doesn't seem that it's very long, very big.
What's the frontage?
That's the only dimension that's not on this drawing.
I don't know exactly.
100, 125-ish?
105.
105?
Yeah, page where the survey. I'm reading.
Okay.
From a staff perspective, Mr. Chair, I think if the 18-inch wall was like a retaining wall or something, I think we would have looked at it somewhat differently than just a freestanding 18-inch wall with a fence on top of it. The ordinance doesn't support that.
Meaning it doesn't serve a function.
Yeah.
Whereas if it...
Right. The other way, at least it would have been like a retaining wall, or it'd have some sort of topographical function to it. This is just a freestanding wall that they're looking to put up to kind of sort of blend in with the architecture of the house, which hasn't really been reviewed or approved yet.
Okay.
I'd like to hear staff's opinion on the 5 additional. Now he's at 17 versus 12.
I really think it wouldn't take a whole lot to, I mean, he did try to move it over a little bit. If he shifted it up a little bit, it would reduce the variance, eliminate the variance, really. We just eliminate it. And having garages that are slightly in front of the face of the wall of the house is very common in Milton. I mean, you'll drive through, you'll see a lot of houses, and then the garages step out just slightly. Actually, it looks nice architecturally. It gives a break to it in the massing of the house. So I just, I mean, it's so easily achieved that from a staff perspective, I said it looks like it's something we could just shift forward and make it comply.
Okay.
Are they opposed
Is there a
to
reason why you feel you can't do that?
just the cost of?
Yeah, it's a cost question. I mean, I could, like you said, we could, if we started from scratch, we could just take the house, plop it right in the middle. I think what's working against us is the existing topography, especially on the one side. You'd have to move it up quite a bit to get to 22 and a half because of how tight that pinch point is, if you can look on the first sheet. So it's not like I just need to move it a foot or two and I'm there. I mean, we tried that after the DRB, and you're way into your front yard then. And that's one of the reasons he bought the lot, was to have a nice expansive front yard and a nice expansive backyard with a lot of landscaping. You move it too close to the street, some of that's gone.
Okay. Any additional questions before we open up for public comment, which may be some online, there doesn't seem to be much here. Any additional questions? All right, if you have a seat, we'll call you back for closing comment.
I kind of do have one.
Oh, go ahead. Hang on,
But
Mr. Reese.
more for staff. Is that
Oh,
okay?
it's staff? Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. Just with the knee wall, I'm not understanding because maybe there's some other information, but it says that it should be dark stained wood, could include accents of natural or man-made stone, brick, aluminum, ornamental or decorative wrought iron, or architectural concrete. Does it say somewhere that the horse fencing cannot be on top of something else? How?
Right. The way the code is, the intent of that code is to have stone piers and just like the photos, columns and things that you saw. But the intent is not to have a wall along the roadway.
That's not what it says, is it?
Oh, it's just the 18 inches?
Right.
It's not a wall. Wow.
It's just a little.
Okay.
Well, I'm just wondering, because it's saying that he needs a variance for that.
Yes.
Because it does not meet code, but I'm just not seeing where the.
Because it's freestanding and there's no,
Yeah.
it's not like a retaining wall. The interpretation from staff's perspective is that it's a freestanding wall along the roadway, and then there's a floorboard horse fence on top of it, which just makes it look more elevated. Versus if the fence was like on grade, it would look like your normal height fence. He's putting a full height fence on top of the 18-inch wall. So it's going to look really quite
Tall.
elevated. When you drive by, you will see the wall and the fence on top of it. And there's really no reason to do it. So
The property, because I drove by there today, is very sloped in the front.
At the very front, yes.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if he puts it on that sloped portion, it's not going to, I don't know if it would appear so elevated. Do you know what I'm saying?
And that is where we're placing it, to your point.
On the sloped portion.
That's correct. Right in front of that line of trees that's currently there, and that's going to really give us the slope up.
And could that stone part be considered a retaining wall? If they put soil behind it or something, I mean, could they do something like that? I just don't know
part of
where
what
it is.
we should be also considering is the area as well in terms of the ordinance applying to the whole area in conformity, right? So I think the applicant fairly points out that there is some disparity from property to property because of what Milton inherited. But the ordinance going forward would be to put designs in place that would be more conforming and look more uniform.
Yeah,
Whereas if this applicant puts a wall, stone wall, and a four-board fence, and then other applicants are required to put in four-board fence, then we're back to kind of lack of uniformity.
It's not just four-board fencing, though. I mean, they can use all sorts of things. They can use brick, aluminum, ornamental, decorative wrought iron, architectural concrete.
She's
There's a
just
lot
saying
of.
as she reads it, she doesn't see why they need a variance.
I understand.
Based
No.
on what
Can I suggest we
stated.
finish out any, or have we closed the public hearing?
Comment? Yeah, that's fine. Then
Okay.
we'll handle this in discussion.
Okay.
Thank you. So I will open this for public comment. 2 equal 10-minute sessions, starting with a 10-minute session for anyone here to speak in favor of case V20-18. Do you have any, Cody?
I don't have any public comment cards, nor I see anybody on Zoom with their hand raised.
Okay. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in opposition?
I don't have any public comment cards, nor nobody's raising their hand in Zoom.
Okay. So with that, you have an opportunity to make a closing comment. We'll have an opportunity to ask closing questions if you care.
I don't think I have any further comment. I'm really glad you brought that up because of the steeper slope on the front side. Again, the fence isn't made to look that tall, and the full height of the fence is still going to fully comply with zoning, which I believe is 6 feet, and we're only asking for 4.5 feet. So again, we're just providing a base to tie into the house and make the fence look elegant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you clarify what the overall height of a fence is?
you mean as proposed?
As the ordinance will allow. Is it 6 as stated? Overall height?
Usually it's lower on the front yard. Huh?
For AG1 zone property along the front, fences shall not exceed 60 inches in height from finished grade.
Foot.
Yeah.
5 foot. Okay, so 18 inches of stone wall plus the 3 or 4 board fence would be allowed, not to exceed overall height of 5 feet.
That's correct.
Okay.
So they're over a foot.
No, they would have to comply to that.
Oh, they would have to comply.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It would be 4.5 feet total height.
Oh, I thought you were saying the 18
No,
inches
the total
plus.
height.
Oh.
Knowing that the zoning requirement is 5, sorry, I misspoke.
Okay.
5 feet, we're going to be 4.5 feet with 18 inches and the wood, all inclusive.
So 18-inch stone wall plus 3 foot of fencing.
Yep.
As stated. Okay.
Why 18 inches?
I think you're making the point of the city architect. It's a design preference.
Okay.
It's not a code requirement.
No, I was just wondering why they decided 18 inches versus 12 inches.
Enough to give it a base,
Okay.
but not too much to limit what we believe is the
So you thought 18
zoning.
inches was aesthetically the
Correct,
best?
which
Okay.
allows you to see into an agricultural lot. So we want to give you enough, but again, not block the view.
Okay.
Okay, if there's no further questions for staff, I'll make a note that the public comment is closed, and I'll open the floor for a motion and a second.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion on petition number V2018-3430 Bethany Bend to number 1, deny the reduction of the side yard setback from 25 feet to 12 feet. I mean, I know it's 7.
That's fine, as stated.
To 12 feet. And then secondly, the second part, to approve a stone masonry material under the 3/4 board horse fence along public road not to exceed 5 feet.
I'll second for discussion. You want to
Do you want me to say something?
explain
Okay.
where you're coming from?
I think that our city architect is great and can work with you in helping you to move this out of this setback. The second issue is the 4-board fence. I mean, I thought that the images that you showed were very much in keeping with the just incorporating stone, real stone, and maybe we should say that, natural stone, into the 4-board fencing and keeping in that 5-foot allowance.
Let's clarify if that was a condition that you wanted to be the natural stone.
Yeah.
We're still.
I would like to add that in there.
Okay, we'll formalize that in a minute. I just want to get the discussion out.
Yeah, I just think that the reason that the fencing stip is in the covenants or the code is because of disallowing or not allowing people to come in and just use any type of material that they want, so that we don't have a hodgepodge of.
Well, all those materials are listed. There aren't any.
But what I'm saying is, would you put? I'm not disagreeing with your motion. I'm just saying, do we put stips that only a certain type of stone, and then does he have a stone that he's planning on using?
I do, but it's.
Hang on, you keep doing that.
No, I'm sorry. So I guess my point is,
we'd have to further stipulate.
We'd have to further
that it had to be subject to architectural review.
That's correct. But then we're kind of going back to the previous, which he's already stipulated what's approved. So then we get into
if we specify that we are allowing this,
we're allowing him to do an 18
and then
base
of stone,
subject to Bob's.
We could do that if that's a concern.
I mean, the design review board, their comment was just, that they thought it was okay, and then to have the material real stone. I mean, I don't see a problem with it. I just don't see where, I think if there was something that said no stone under 4-board fencing,
I
that
agree.
would
I think
that would mean something.
I think they've interpreted it based on, history or what they know maybe the city's looking for, but based on the verbiage here, I'm not sure it's not allowed, by reading it here.
Well, I can see where the interpretation could go either way, honestly. And there's probably some reason why it was written with a degree of flexibility and interpretation. But fencing materials, I'm quoting, fencing materials shall be primarily dark stained wood, so primarily, and could include accents of natural or man-made stone. And the question is a wall, a continuous wall, 100 and whatever feet across the front at 18 inches high, is that an accent or is that something more?
Well, it's 18 inches, and then you've got 3.5 feet, I guess, above that of the wood. I know there are going to be some stone pillars, right, that are mixed in there. I feel like it's I don't know.
I wouldn't consider 18 inches really a wall. I
don't think of it as a wall.
I wouldn't think of it as a wall.
The consistency, uniformity, flow of that area is something I am concerned with. And, this one is certainly more expensive to construct. And I would find it hard to believe that others would follow suit if that's, not a requirement. And so then do we just perpetuate the lack of uniformity in that area?
But how is it uniform if you can add in all these other things? And I live on Birmingham Road. I mean, I see, 4-board fencing, I see wrought iron, I see everything, all along that road. And driving through Milton. I mean,
so
I think
wrought iron fencing is not permissible in this area.
What is?
Wrought iron fencing, is my interpretation, is not permissible. It's permissible as an accent.
Not on a main street.
But 4-board wood is the predominance of what is specified in the
I guess
code.
I'm talking about decorative wrought iron, which is listed on here.
As an accent.
Yeah.
Not as a fence.
I think I have a neighbor that has, a new neighbor that has decorative wrought iron.
And I have no problem with the 17 feet setback. I think they have their plans. They've tried to reach the city, halfway. I don't think it's that unreasonable. And so I guess I would be more in favor of approving the 17 feet. Am I saying it correctly?
Yes.
Versus denying it. Because I think it's what?
Understood. I have a difference of opinion on that. I think it's self-imposed, and there's alternatives that are not unreasonable to work their way out of that.
That's fine.
But that's discussion. Okay, so with what we've heard in discussion, is there anything you would like to amend regarding the motion or before we vote on the primary? We discussed perhaps having the city architect have review.
Yeah, that's great. The city architect to review the design of the knee wall or the fence.
And material.
And materials, and so that it conforms to the feeling. I think it does.
Okay, so
I'm using the word conform.
Your motion then to amend would be to have the design and materials of the fence subject to review and approval by the city architect.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second. Is there any discussion regarding that? Because we'll vote on that first.
Okay.
This amendment. Okay, all those in favor of this amendment to require material and design to be reviewed by the city and approved by the city architect, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
I said aye before.
So the amendment to add this condition was passed unanimous. The primary motion was to deny Part 1 to reduce the side yard from 25 feet to 12 feet. And the second part was to approve to allow the stone masonry material under a 3 or 4 board horse fence. All those in favor of denying Part 1 and approving Part 2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So the motion to deny Part 1 passed. The motion to approve Part 2 passed.
With a condition.
Unanimous. Okay, thank you. The next item on our agenda was V20-19, 640 Doris Road. That staff has been administratively deferred.
Correct. That item will not be heard tonight.
Okay. So then that moves us to consideration of appeals and secondary variances, item 7 on our agenda.
That is correct.
Before we move into this process, I did want to read what this process is. It's been a while since we've done these. So, as we've been, as was shared by us, by the city attorney, and reminding us of our bylaws, the consideration of appeals and secondary variances is a procedure that, number one, the Department of the Community Development, city attorney, or other city representative shall first present its case to the board. Presentation shall initially include identification of the order, requirement, decision, or determination that is the subject of the appeal. The city shall then be permitted to call and question witnesses and to offer photographs, documentation, and other forms of demonstrative evidence to the board in support thereof. The presentation of the city's case in chief shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes unless additional time is otherwise permitted by the board. The appellant shall have the opportunity to cross-examine each witness called by the city. After the city has presented its case in chief, the appellant shall present their case to the board. The appellant shall be permitted to call and question witnesses and to offer photographs, documentation, and other forms of demonstrative evidence to the board to support their application. The presentation of the appellant's case in chief shall be limited to a maximum of 15 minutes, unless additional time is otherwise permitted by the board. But in no event shall the appellant have less time to present their case in chief than the city. The city shall have the opportunity to cross-examine each witness called by the appellant. The city shall have an opportunity to present rebuttal evidence only, which will be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes unless additional time is otherwise permitted by the board. At any time during the proceedings, the board may question the city, the appellant, and any person called by the city or appellant as a witness at any time during the proceeding. Upon conclusion of the city's opportunity to present rebuttal evidence, the city and the appellant shall each have the opportunity to present a closing argument to the board, which shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes for each party, unless additional time is otherwise permitted by the board, which shall apply equally to both parties. The city shall bear the burden of proof. The rules of evidence as set forth in the Georgia Civil Practice Act shall not apply to hearings before the board. The chair may disallow any testimony or evidence if such testimony or evidence is not relevant to the matter appealed, or if the presentation becomes repetitive and no new facts or evidence is being presented. The board shall reach a decision following the public hearing within the time limitations contained in the City of Milton Code of Ordinances. Any evidence presented during the hearing shall be considered part of the record and shall remain in the possession of the board. The Board of Appeals may make the following actions pursuant to the secondary variance or the interpretation of an appeal. 1, we can affirm an order, requirement, or decision wholly or partly. 2, we can reverse an order, requirement, or decision wholly or partly. 3, we can clarify, present an interpretation of the text in the form of a statement of clarification. Such statements shall not contain substitute language, but shall rely upon language and definitions contained in the zoning ordinance and definitions contained in Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary, 11th edition. So to summarize, the burden of proof is with the city. We have three options: to affirm in whole or part, to reverse in whole or part, or to clarify. Is that satisfactory?
Absolutely.
Okay. So with that, I will first ask the city to make its presentation not to exceed 15 minutes. I prefer you're mic'd, that's all. So if you want to do it from there, that's fine. Please state your name for the record.
Cody Hendricks, planning technician for the city of Milton. Case number V20-20-16662 Phillips Road. The requested variance, the applicant is to appeal the rejection of the Community Development Director's decision denying the acceptance of a building permit. Section 64-24263A. The site is a 4.60 acre lot located on the west side of Phillips Road. The property is zoned AG1 and is located in the Rural Milton overlay. The applicant removed the existing structures on the property without obtaining a demolition permit nor getting reviewed by the Design Review Board. By not obtaining the proper permission, the applicant cannot perform any type of development on the property for 5 years per Section 64-24263A. The applicant submitted a building permit for a fence, but the Community Development Director rejected the building permit application. Section 64-24263A states, if a property is demolished or relocated without a certificate of appropriateness from the Design Review Board, or in the event the plans are changed for the property from which the resource was removed without approval of the change plans by the DRB, then the following restrictions, in addition to any other penalties or remedies set forth in this article, shall be applicable to the site where the structure or property was formerly located. No building or other permits will be issued for construction on the site, with the exception of a permit to restore such structure or property after obtaining a certificate of appropriateness for a period of 5 years after the date of such demolition or removal. The applicants are requesting to appeal the rejection of the Community Development Director's decision denying the acceptance of a building permit. On September 1st, 2020, the Design Review Board met and had the following comments. No issues with the variance and recommend approval. And staff's response will be, I believe, whatever the city attorney may.
I think the only thing I would ask for the record is that the decision letter, I believe, was circulated, and it's
correct. I believe you should have a signed letter from the Community Development Director outlining everything that was explained and given a permit number as well.
I noticed on this letter it was addressed to Mr. Dennis Gilreath at a location in Oakley, Georgia.
I believe that was a typo. It should have been Oakley, California.
Okay. Is there anything else from your presentation?
Other than, I believe this was caught during a minor plat process that the applicant submitted, and it was caught by the site review on a verification on our geographic information systems showing that the structures, the plans did not match what the GIS was showing.
What was the time frame that the GIS was looking at?
This would probably be beginning of the year, probably January, February time, I believe.
The GIS satellite imagery.
Correct.
From January of 2020. Showing structures?
Yes.
Do you have any evidence of that?
I do not at this time.
Okay. You mentioned a minor plat. This property is going through a minor plat. What does that mean? Can you please elaborate?
So the property, the applicants were proposing to subdivide the property into 2 new lots. One was going to be for the parents and the other was going to be for, I believe, the son to live on. So before we can grant a minor plat, we have to make sure that the property is in compliance with all current code, and that is when this issue was found.
Okay, I'll ask the applicant for the size of those proposed lots. It's also stated from the city that the issuance of a building permit is when this arose. Is actually, to clarify, was that a fence permit?
Correct. That was for a fence, I believe, on the front of the property.
And was that a 4-board fence, or can you please elaborate?
Yeah, that was a 4-board Milton equestrian fence.
Okay. Did the applicant personally make application, or was there a representative?
I believe there was a representative.
Okay.
Do we know how long these people have owned this property?
Per the applicant's letter, I believe they've owned it since September of 2019.
And when do we think they demolished the structures?
Anywhere between September of 2019 to when the minor plat was submitted, so early January of 2020.
So they bought it and demolished the structures immediately?
Correct. I will say, from what we've heard, there was some vandalism on the property, and they were given guidance by the insurance company to remediate as quickly as possible. And I believe it was just either the applicant or general contractor didn't know the severity of punishment without obtaining the proper approvals and demolition permits before conducting business or performing the work.
Really?
Okay. Any other questions for the city?
Did we receive anything from the contractor who did this?
We did not receive anything.
Okay.
Is this a contractor who works in this area?
The contractor that the applicant that first submitted the minor plat was also the home builder for the property owners, and I don't know how often he works within the city, but he is a licensed general contractor, and I believe he was a professional engineer.
Okay. So to clarify, the city accessed GIS information to identify the property and alleges as of January 2020 there was GIS information indicating structures. Upon physical site review, in what time frame?
That would be early January of 2020 to probably...
No, when did the city identify the structures were no longer there?
The city identified the structures during the minor plat process when the plat showed one thing and the GIS confirmed that the structures were not there.
Okay, so the city has not done a physical site visit?
Well, currently now, when I went out to post the property for the variance sign, the structures were no longer there. The silt fence and everything was up, so site stabilization was in place, but the actual date of occurrence for the demolition, we do not know that exact date.
Okay, but I want to clarify this timeline a little bit. So minor plat was brought in what date? Minor plat submission.
Roughly probably January of 2020.
All right, so minor plat was brought into the city January of 2020. At that time, GIS information was pulled, which identified structures?
Correct.
Plat did not identify structures?
Correct.
Where the discrepancy was identified by the city?
Yes.
But no physical inspection was done at that time of the site?
To my knowledge, no site visit was conducted.
Okay. All right. Is there any additional questions? You do have time remaining in your 15-minute allotted. You're at 9.5 minutes. Anything else to make the city's case? Case Russ?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Mr. Chairman, just technically, I believe the applicant has the opportunity to cross-examine if.
Yes, I was moving to that.
Okay.
So, according to the procedure, which I'm keeping here, the appellant does have the opportunity to cross-examine the city and/or any witnesses.
This guy finally gets to play attorney.
And then you will
State
also have allotted 15 minutes to make your case.
Yes. Going by standard procedure, I will introduce myself as Scott Reese with Bromelo Reese & Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia 30004. I am the representative of the Gill Reese, and I've furnished paperwork to the city to establish that. The only thing was clarification. In my earlier staff meetings, it was indicated to me that the minor plat submittal that had an accompanying existing condition surveys is what triggered because the existing condition surveys show the structures on there, and the minor plat showed no structures on the property, and the review person caught the difference, and that is what triggered it. So not a GIS.
Yes, that was.
So just that is my meetings with staff previously. That was the timeline and the situation. So just for clarification purposes.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I really have to question.
So is it your assertion that the applicant was not withholding information?
That is correct.
So if you're going to ask questions to him, we'll get on his direct presentation, the applicant's.
Right, but I can ask questions at any time.
You can ask questions of Cody, the city, while the city is up.
Okay, thank you for keeping point of orders here.
He'll be up in just a second, it would appear.
All right, so it is now, we are in part 2 of the process.
That's you.
Which is the appellant having the opportunity to make whatever case or discredit anything that you've heard this evening, not to exceed 15 minutes.
Yes. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I am Scott Reese with Bromelo Reese & Associates, doing business at 13685 Highway 9, Milton, Georgia 30004. I'm here representing the Gilris, Dennis, Sue, and Greg in their application for a reversal of the, or an appeal of the rejection of the Community Development Director's decision denying the acceptance of a building permit. As stated before, Ordinance 64-2426-3A states that no building or other permits will be issued for a period of 5 years after demolition of structures without approval of the Design Review Board. Synopsis of why we're here. The Gilris reside in Oakley, California. They are on a short timeline to retire. They wish to relocate to the state of Georgia, and they picked the city of Milton. They found this 4.25 acre property on Phillips Road, which is at the very northeastern section of the city of Milton, about approximately 500 feet south of Cherokee County. It's a very remote section of the city. So they purchased the property.
went back to California, returned approximately 45 days later. The property that they purchased had 2 vacant residences and a few assorted outbuildings. When they returned approximately 45 days later, they found that 2 of the structures, for lack of a better term, garages, had been removed from the property. The building material completely removed from the property. The 2 vacant residences had been vandalized and looted. There is, or was a lot, not so much now. Piping and other materials have been stolen from job sites and taken out. What has happened, they gutted the structures, took out the windows, doors, removed the piping, the metal, plumbing and ventilation, or HVAC, and made the structures dangerous, in their opinion. They called the city. They first called 911. 911 pulled up the city of Alpharetta per the old address, hadn't been changed over. Long story short, they eventually got the city of Milton police and described, and the response was, we cannot personally protect your property. We can add it to a patrol list, but there's very limited things we can do.
Excuse me, what was the time frame of this report to the city?
This was at the 45-day, approximately 45 days when they returned and found the structures removed.
Middle of November? Is that
somewhere in that neighborhood? No one, they...
Okay, that's close enough.
Okay. So they also contacted their insurance company, and the insurance company directed them that those buildings were, and their wording was called, an attractive nuisance, and that they needed to remove those structures as soon as possible to limit their liability. That if someone got hurt in the structures, they would be liable. So, from 2,000 miles away in California, they were able to contact a GC, a general contractor. This general contractor was not familiar with the City of Milton ordinance that requires a design review board approval. He removed the structures. So the structures were removed. Most municipalities and counties do not require design review board. They do require permits. That is the problem, which I came in late into the situation. That's the one thing that I can't excuse in the whole process. A mistake was made there. The Gilreaths were trying to manage it from 2,000 miles away. Their error was they didn't manage it as tightly as they should. They took the word of the GC that he was doing what he was supposed to do. So they're now at a point where when they discovered that the error had been made and that the structures had been removed illegally, they were alerted they were in a 5-year shutdown for any building permits on their property.
What was the time frame they were alerted of this?
This is when the rejection of the minor plat in January or February of 2020.
The letter I have here from the city is dated July 27th, 2020.
The initial rejection of the minor subdivision plat was the first knowledge of...
verbal or written?
Verbal.
Verbal.
Maybe COVID had something to do.
Okay.
No, this was in January.
No, the lack of the letter getting out or something.
Well, we'll ask this.
Okay. So, when...
And can you also clarify, trying to establish a bit of a timeline, the time frame, it was asked earlier, the time frame that the structures were demolished?
My understanding is the structures were removed in December of 19. And this is all, I have no written documentation, just verbal.
And while we're on this theme, is there any documentation or pictures of the vandalism?
No.
Of any reports to the City of Milton Police?
There is a record of the call.
Record of a call, and that's, okay, and they indicated all they could do was patrol.
That is my understanding.
Is there any documentation of correspondence with the insurance company?
No. Not that I've been, no.
Not that
it's all verbal. No, nothing written.
Okay. Okay. Keep going. I've got the timeline.
Okay. All right. So when the rejection of the minor subdivision plat came through and the reasoning for it, they originally hired an attorney, and they met with staff, and it was kind of decided that maybe legally, or that it was not a situation where that would necessarily go in. That is when I was called in and I met with staff on...
what was the time frame that you were engaged?
Originally, May, the month of May.
May of 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
So then we went through different scenarios, back and forth, and we arrived at jointly, the city staff and myself and the Gilruths, that we would formally submit a building permit, and then the rejection of that building permit would then allow the process to move before the Board of Zoning Appeals to render a decision. But until that was triggered and the rejection of that building permit by the community development director, we were all still swimming upstream without a lot of direction.
There was no other recourse.
That was how it was explained to me by city staff. So we chose the least obtrusive and the least expensive building permit, that being a fence permit, to trigger the process. So that's where we're at. The Gilruths would have liked to have been here. Unfortunately, they lost their house in California to the forest fires.
Oh, boy.
So I'm here doing my best to get... Originally, we were looking at maybe going before council to adjust the ordinance. After meeting with the city manager and other staff members, I agreed that the deterrence of the ordinance probably is such that maybe we don't, for lack of a better term, throw out the baby with the bathwater, that your goal is when we have things that operate outside of the ordinance, that the particular cases can be brought before you and individual decisions made without allowing, say, a developer to purchase a piece of property, remove a structure and claim, mea culpa, sorry. And, in that particular case, maybe the 5-year, that would be up to you guys to decide. So we're not trying to reinvent the ordinance or change it. We're, in this particular case, we think that allowances should be made for someone who was not aware of the situation and was 2,000 miles away and were instructed by their insurer to remedy a situation that was that they faced a fair amount of liability. I have a slideshow that I gave for DRB. It's up to you guys. It shows the structures originally and the post pictures. It's up to you guys. Time.
Well, from a time standpoint, and we haven't done any cross-examination, I just let you know where you're at.
Yeah.
Almost 12 minutes.
Okay. I think you have the pictures.
Yes,
They're in your packet. So I just want to. Finally, the one thing that I will, that as I finished with DRB, the chairman of the Design Review Board, in their unanimous decision of recommendation of approval, stated that, in her opinion, that looking at the pictures of the structures, that they would have granted with no problem the removal of the structures.
I have a question regarding intent. It's mentioned in your in this application for appeal that they're to subdivide minor plat.
Yes.
I don't believe we have the minor plat subdivision to know what is intended in terms of size of lots.
Right. So they are roughly going to be equal in size to a. It's a 1.7 acre tract and they're larger than 1 acre.
The total property is 4.6.
Yeah, the intent is a 2.97 and a 1.63. The reasoning is there are some bufferings on streams and setbacks. So we're trying to get basically equal building area. They are not equal in acreage. There were two residences on the property to start with, but it was a single property so it was non-conforming. It was existing non-conforming. So to replace and have two structures or two residences, it would have to go through the minor subdivision plat to create two individual parcels to have two distinct residences.
I have a question. On the thing I'm seeing here, the survey, there's red X's on all of the buildings?
Yes.
Were all buildings removed?
All of those structures, there's a well house, and whether it's on there or not, it's still there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 structures were removed?
If that is...
Some were either stolen or demolished.
Right.
2 were removed. If you've seen the pictures, those carports...
Oh, the metal?
They were removed.
And the structures were in distress prior to being vandalized.
Yes, they were vacant.
Of approximately 60 years of age, 50 to 60 years of age.
The Fulton County tax records, which is my best source, shows them being constructed one late 50s, one early 60s.
Okay.
So did the insurance company tell them to get rid of all of the building property?
The conversation that I have had was that any haphazard structure that, and the wording that was given to me is an attractive nuisance that especially children find it hard to resist crawling through abandoned old structures. It's the same deal. I have a lake on a cattle farm, and if I do not post, then I am liable because people want to go to the lake. And it's the same principle with that. And these abandoned structures are a attractive accessory for neighborhood kids to go crawl through barn lofts, buildings, and that was the response from the insurance
It
company.
looks like some of the structures, that, i.e. the sheds at the rear of the property, were actually non-conforming in a stream buffer.
Yes.
Okay.
So, just for staff, would they have needed permits to remove the smaller sheds?
Yes.
Okay.
Would there have been a reason for denial of those permits?
The only reason for denial is if the design review board saw any kind of historical significance to them, but generally staff looks at the Georgia Historical Survey, and if they are not on the roster, then staff recommends that there's no historical value to them. So then it's up to the board, to the design review board. And also, I believe there's 7 considerations that they look at, and they have to make sure they meet all 7 criteria for demolition permits.
It's historical and cultural is when they ask me specifically.
Okay, I want to make a quick point of order here. We're over your allotted time, and I want to make sure this is a fair process. There's plenty of opportunity for cross-examining and questioning. At this point in the process,
since we won't hold it against him, since you're asking him questions, I'll allow you to. I mean, it's okay.
So it's the city's okay with extending this time?
Yeah, as long as you are asking the questions, you're free to ask questions, and he can answer them. He's not adding anything additional. He's just responding to your questions.
Thank you. So are there additional questions for the applicant? The appellant, sorry. Just as a point of curiosity, has the applicant retained local vendors, contractors who are familiar with the Milton requirements going forward, to your knowledge?
To my knowledge, the new GC has been in 2 meetings with me with staff, so he has been made aware of those
And in terms
conditions.
of the minor plat application, is your firm involved in that?
No, that was already done before I was brought on.
Okay. So you're merely engaged to manage this appeal process?
That is correct.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any additional questions? Okay, thank you. The city has an opportunity to cross-examine the appellant.
Okay.
And that is a 5-minute.
All right, so the first question is, you mentioned that they called 911, but when I checked the records with Milton Police, they said there was no records of any reports or site visits by Milton Police. Do you have any record that you can show the chairman and the board?
I do not. I spoke with the policeman outside, and he said that there was a record of a call for that property.
There was one years ago for some sort of lock in the car door was locked or something, and they needed to get access. But there was no record. To my knowledge, there's no record. And so the next one would be if the insurance company directed the applicant to take down the structures, is there any claim that the applicant made to his insurance company when something gets vandalized and stolen? Did he make any sort of a claim to his insurance company or have any proof that the insurance company in fact directed him to remove the structures? Or is that just hearsay? I mean, you're attesting to it, so I just want to cross-examine you.
It would be hearsay. I think that they probably were not anticipating needing a written record. And I wish Miss McDonald was here because she was in contact about the police calls. I find that kind of because there has been a past acknowledgement that the police were called.
Mm-hmm.
But no evidence?
Not that I can dig up.
Okay.
We had
Any further cross-examining?
no.
At this point, the city has an opportunity to present rebuttal evidence only, which shall be limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Is there any rebuttal evidence to be shared?
Rebuttal evidence? No.
Okay. Upon the conclusion of the city's opportunity to present rebuttal evidence, the city and the appellant shall each have an opportunity to present a closing argument limited to a maximum of 5 minutes. Would the city care to make a closing argument?
Okay, so when at one point staff approached the city council and said, geez, do we need the DRB to review demolitions? The city council turned around and said, well, not only do we feel that we want the DRB to review them, but we want to give them approval ability, not just recommendation ability. We want them to actually, as a board, approve or deny demolitions. Then they further went on and said, listen, we want some sort of penalty in there so that when somebody comes in and demolishes a building without DRB's approval, that we're going to put a penalty on there. The penalty was actually pretty harsh. It's a 5-year no-build penalty because they really wanted to deter people from coming in and taking down structures without giving due process to the general community to let them know what was going on, what buildings would potentially be coming down, and if they had any sort of value, that the DRB would be able to weigh in on that, and the public would be able to weigh in on that. So in that sense, I think that's how all the code was created, and it's there, and it's really there as a deterrent. So on the other token, not to support his presentation, but if they had gone to the DRB, I think the city would be in the belief that the DRB board would have approved the demolition of these structures. They didn't have any real historical significance. So in that case, if he had gone through the process, I truly believe the DRB would have approved these demolitions.
So in your interpretation, the city's interpretation of the intent of this ordinance as a deterrent, you said for people taking down structures without proper review. At the time, was there a pattern that was present within the city of demolitions happening, that they felt that they needed to put such a harsh punitive element to this?
The DRB always had the ability to review demolitions. And at one point, I think city executive leadership went in and said, geez, do we really need this? And they brought it to council and questioned it and said to the council, do we still need to, do you really think, is the council's will to still have the DRB review and review these demolitions? And the council said, yeah, we want them not only to review them, we want them to approve them, where the DRB is normally just a recommendation board. So in this case, this is the one item where they have some certain criteria, the 7 criteria, and that they have to actually physically approve. And if somebody comes in and says, we're going to try to divert from that, they put a penalty on there that says, well, we don't really want people to do that. We feel strong about it, so we're going to put a no-build 5-year period on that property to make it a strong deterrent.
So again, I'm trying to understand the context and the intent around the punitive side that was added by council, 5-year element. Was that primarily to be a disincentive for developers or for private citizens who may or may not understand the process?
I think a disincentive for anybody who says, look, you know what, I know I don't want to go in front of the DRB for this. I'm just going to take it down and I'll ask for forgiveness versus then.
So that was what they were trying to address, was the malicious demolition for self-serving and not, okay.
Right.
Thank you for clarifying the city's interpretation.
That's what I just wanted this board to know, that was sort of the history and the creation of all of this. But with that said, I truly believe that if it had gone in front of DRB, there was really no historical significance to these structures, and I think the DRB board would have approved the demolition of these. I can't speak for the board, but I think that with my knowledge of it, I believe that they would have approved the demolition of these.
Okay, thank you. And as the appellant, you have a closing argument, 5-minute limit.
Clarification of the process. I have 2 residents on Phillips Road, or property owners, that came to address the board.
Yeah, there's not a public comment portion of this.
So that is not allowed.
Can the city attorney please?
They could have been presented as witnesses as part of the presentation.
Okay.
So if you would care to characterize what you understand they may be claiming.
Yes.
Can you do that in his rebuttal or closing argument? Closing argument?
The argument is not intended to be presentation of additional evidence or reference to what the evidence would have been if your closing mentions it. It just theoretically is not part of the evidence to be considered, but if you would like to let them know what would have been said.
Okay. I regret that I was not aware that public presentation was not part of the process, because I think it would have been beneficial to the board to hear their opinion that they were in support of the applicant. So
you still have an opportunity to cross-examine and ask questions.
Yes. So thank you.
We have an opportunity to ask questions. Correct?
You've moved on to closing statements.
It says, at any time during the proceedings, the board may question the city, the appellant, and any person called by the city or the appellant. At any time during the proceedings.
Yes, you can ask him some questions.
Okay, thank you.
You can ask him some questions.
I'll ask you questions if I need to, or if the rest of the board.
Yeah. So, in my, I guess, rebuttal, the one thing that I want to try to emphasize is that there was no malicious intent in removing the structures for a density or an economic gain. There were 2 residences on the property. When the ultimate process works out, hopefully there will be 2 residences on the property. It will now be 2 properties, but it will, from the whole, simply be divided in 2. So it was a mistake by people that were unaware, trying to manage their property from 2,000 miles away, and it was just a lack of knowledge, not a malicious intent. And if you will look at the pictures of the post-development, you will see that care was taken to preserve all the trees. Tree fencing was put up. Silt fencing was put up. The property was smooth and graded and grassed. So it was done with good intentions, just a failure to act accordingly. So, thank you.
We're clear to ask clarifying questions if need be, counsel.
It says at any time during the proceeding.
Okay. I have a question. Why staff was so delayed in notifying this applicant in terms of their being in violation when it was noted by staff's presentation, by the city's presentation, that this was identified in January 2020, yet there was no written correspondence of this violation for over 6 months. And in its written correspondence, it was addressed to an address in Georgia, not to the applicant's or appellant's address in California?
I can't speak on to why there was much delay. I believe there was a lot of communication between staff and legal on the proper process and moving forward in the best interest of the Gilreaths and with the city. And I believe and with COVID coming on, that was kind of a delay in that part. And I believe once there was an identifiable process for the Gilreaths to move forward with, I believe that was when they applied for a fence permit back in July of 22nd of 2020. And then roughly a week later, that was when the denial letter was sent out to the Gilreaths, apparently in Oakley, Georgia. And that's clearly a typo, so I'm not sure if they received that letter. Hopefully they did. But I can't speak to what staff member drafted this.
So what we heard from both the city and from the appellant is quite a bit of hearsay and not a lot of documentation. And I think the city, in this case, may have facilitated and participating in verbal exchanges. I would expect more documentation from the city in this regard. The appellant, in this case, being private citizen, may not be as familiar with process, but the city, in this case, not notifying until the end of July, COVID or no COVID, is concerning.
I mean, just for purposes of this proceeding, I want to emphasize that for purposes of evidentiary requirements, the rules of evidence don't apply. So the hearsay objection that one might expect to hear called from the opposing side doesn't necessarily apply.
Understood. Okay, so in following this process, you both have had an opportunity to make a closing arguments. Both have been made. Just as a reminder, so you can have a seat, please. The city does have the burden of proof. As noted, the rules of evidence as set forth in the Georgia Civil Practice Act shall not apply. So we are now charged with rendering a decision as a board. And we're bound by three decision options. One would be to affirm the order or the decision of the community development director in whole or part, to reverse the order in whole or part, or to clarify. I really think, and I'd ask for assistance from the city attorney on this, really believe in this case our choices are limited to affirm wholly in part or reverse wholly in part.
Yeah.
There's really not a clarification.
I would agree with that. Generally speaking, it is really affirm or deny the director's decision.
Okay.
And when you get to the motion, we'll make sure that we understand. To affirm the decision would be to reject the application, the appellant. So just
to reverse would be to reverse the community development director's decision and award to the appellant.
Right.
I do have one clarifying question as well before we move into that decision. In terms of the city's authority to retain the right to seek fees for demolition retroactively, regardless, does the city maintain that right, or do we have to grant that right?
Yes, this decision, well, first of all, no. Your decision tonight is only whether or not the decision to reject the application for the fence permit based on the 5-year no-build penalty applied. It was not a decision that had any application to the other penalties that may or may not have been applied by the city. So you would not be reviewing any other alternatives, and it would not be your position to make recommendations or attach such conditions. It's just a review of the actual decision that took place.
Okay.
And that's not to say that the city wouldn't have those options. I haven't looked to see whether there's any timing issues on any of those or not. But it wouldn't be the purview of this board for tonight's application.
Okay. All right, in this case, then I would make a motion. Is there any discussion before I move into a motion? I'd make a motion to reverse the Community Development Director's decision on the basis of the city not, I don't believe, honoring its own commitment to process and efficiency with the community, be so blatant in offering written communication regarding their violation, the address issues that were noted, and further the stated intent of the application of the appellant and their demonstrated intentions, along with the city's own admission that had this followed a more normal process, we wouldn't be here tonight. It would have been an approved demolition. Is there any discussion regarding the motion to reverse the Community Development Director's order? All those in favor of
You need to get a second.
Yeah, I see.
Jason seconded, sorry. All those in favor of reversing the decision of the Community Development Director say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion to reverse the order passed unanimous.
Thank you so much. Listen, I promise we're not going to make you wait till the end the next time around. This is the second time you've had to wait till the end.
Hang on, we're not done. We're not done.
Yeah, you better. Make sure.
Item number 8 on our agenda is old business. Is there any old business?
I do know, I don't know if this would fall under old business or new business, but I do know board member Don Kurt did mention about the tree ordinance kind of workshop. And since that new tree ordinance is being implemented, the city arborist is holding kind of a workshop for citizens. So I can reach out to her and see if she can either do a presentation to the board members if you're interested in, or
can we do a Zoom with them?
I believe that's what they're doing. So I can pass that information on to everybody. Just
if you would have the city arborist schedule a Zoom for our board, perhaps the DRB as well, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
You all agree?
Yep.
I would love that.
Thank you. And if it's on a Zoom, I'm assuming it could be recorded and available if it conflicts with schedules?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you for following up on that. Another old business item to make you aware of, Cody, and perhaps for you to follow up with, is Don has had difficulty setting up his city email, which explains his absence tonight. He did not see the notifications which were sent to the city email. He's tried to get them reset. I don't know the technicality. If you could have them reach out to Don, that would be great.
Yes. Probably need to do the same, Cody. I knew we had.
We need some hand holding. Some of the members.
Challenge.
I was handheld. They do a good job. You just need to be handheld. I understand. Item number 9 is new business.
We do not have any new business.
Okay. Item number 10 is Kim's.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
A motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor of adjournment say aye.
Aye.
Lord.
We are adjourned.
That was long, right?